It's supposedly going right now. I have no idea how to check.
We're going to find out eventually.
All right.
How do you even find it?
We'll see. The box is telling me we're on.
It should
The
just pop
box?
up.
Yeah, it should pop up on your channel.
The evil box is telling me we're on.
The evil box. The scary box.
I can't find it.
Give me a second.
Neither can I.
It takes its time. Let me hold on. I could be blocking somewhere.
Do you have it on private?
That's what it is. I'm unlisted.
There it is.
There we go.
That'll do it.
Stand by again. All right. All right, this time, visibility public. All right. Are we ready this time?
Yes, we are.
Go team. Did I do
Oh
it?
boy. It'll pop up in a second.
Will it?
There it is.
You're
Yep.
live. Yeah.
Whoa.
No way.
There we go.
Whoa. That's us.
That is us. That
Whoa,
is
okay,
correct.
it's
Look at
working.
us go.
This is crazy. There's like multiple devices to watch.
And none of them are what you should be looking at right now.
Oh, hi. I'm not used to people helping me with this and having equipment. It's just me in a hotel room scared and alone. Yeah, look, there they are. There's
There they
people.
go. Wow.
Yeah. Woo! Woo!
Okay, so both of you were too ADD to like let that sit there for the
That's
entire
so
time.
many.
It's so cool, though. Look at it. It just rolls.
See, I'm looking at this like
Oh, I know.
that's a lot of people.
I'm aware.
So,
I'm gonna look at. Can you see it on here?
yeah.
Whoa, this is wild.
Is this your first time doing this?
With more than myself,
Gotcha,
yeah.
okay.
Because when it's myself, I'm like, "Hi everyone." My first time hosting a stream. That's not. Yeah, just the first time hosting a stream with people that aren't.
Someone asked who's the ginger, and I think they mean you.
Probably. It's not as red
It's
as
not
you
blonde,
might think.
or it's not red. It's more blonde.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He is Irish, though.
I am.
Yeah.
It probably shines through a little bit. Maybe I should use some of that purple shampoo to make it less red.
Man, how do you even keep
Are
track
Are we all
of this?
just
I
gonna
don't.
stare at the
I'm
chat?
terrible at. Yeah, I'm just
Fair
staring.
enough.
I'm like, whoa, is this not what you do on streams? Whoa.
Well, you gotta remember, our streams get a max of like 200 people. So.
Well.
And
I-
usually they're all
something.
saying milk, so...
Yeah, don't bring that in.
Don't bring
do
it
that
here.
Well, I'm not... My
Leave
point...
that.
These people aren't gonna rant.
How's the audio?
I'm not
Can you
gonna
all
say.
hear us okay? Does everything sound okay? We'll give it a.
They're calling your
we'll
hair
give it a
majestic.
come in.
Mine?
They're simping for him.
They are simping hard for
He deserves it.
Thanks,
for
guys.
this Aiden.
Thank you all so much for the donations. We
Very
may not-
hot
We
ginger.
probably won't read a ton
I
of
told
them in
you.
the
I told you
beginning,
if you
but-
bring up milk, they're gonna do it.
All right.
What, did they start doing
it's
it?
All
Yes.
milk. It's all milk.
Ah, damn it.
Thanks so much for Brown Mountain Lights video. Went there.
So for those who are
Also,
not
thank you,
aware,
Miss.
that happens on our channel.
Whoever donated $50 just now, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone. I don't know how many we're gonna be able to read. Depends on how big the chat is, but.
We got a
We'll do our
$20
best.
super chat from Vladimir Putin, so that's cool.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President.
We're glad in your busy schedule that you're able to take the time to check out what's really
Barry
important.
Bobshire.
There
thank you for
is
the 50,
something
appreciate
really
it.
funny about the idea of Vladimir Putin taking time away from whatever is going on in Ukraine to watch
Yeah.
a couple of American YouTubers talk about the
I mean,
Bible.
why not?
Yeah, fair.
You know, like we're cool.
Well, I mean,
Not-
think about it. He needs to be prepared for any scenario, and if there are Wendigos over there,
True.
he needs to know.
Tactical Wendigo, send it to Ukraine.
He probably would.
No, that's our secret weapon. Ukraine has the Wendigo.
Oh wait,
Yep.
someone's asking.
Yeah.
That's why they're still in
Somebody's
the fight.
asking about the red drink on the table.
Oh,
Oh yes, finally!
Yeah.
Finally someone wants to know about the
Doctor
red
enough.
drink.
It's about time. Okay, this brand is an Appalachian made in Johnson City. Fantastic natural energy drink. Comes in 2 flavors: cherry and green. I love them so much, and I've been in their DMs for a while wanting them to sponsor me. So Doctor Enough, if you're watching this, send me a shirt. I don't care. Just let me have the satisfaction of being Doctor Enough sponsored. I appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you.
Randall, Dr. Enough. Spelled
Thank you.
E-N-U-F.
E-N-U-F. Enough is enough, like it says.
Even though most of you don't know who we are, we did try it. We can confirm.
Yeah, maybe we
it's good.
should. Maybe we should introduce ourselves. For those who don't know,
Oh, yeah.
We are.
I'm great at this.
my name's Aiden Mattis. This is Aiden Thornbury. We run a channel called The Lore Lodge where we talk about folklore, paranormal stuff, history, and religion. And every month we do a show with this guy where we talk about weird stories from the Bible, whether that's cool weird or weird or really any type of weird.
All kinds of weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's one on hell, there's one on Genesis.
Yeah. So
There's a bunch.
we talk about weird biblical topics, and not a lot of people who watch my channel know that I have a monthly podcast I do with
Yeah.
them. And they normally live in Pennsylvania, and I'm down here in Tennessee. So while they're in, I thought it'd be a good idea if we do a live one on my channel, so all of you will know that this is a thing we do every month over on his channel.
Yep.
If you go to the link in the description of the stream, the only thing in the description is a link to their channel. That's it. You can't miss it. So go to the description, click on that. Actually, you know what? Do it right now before you forget. We'll wait. We'll wait on you whenever you get back.
We wanted to make it as easy as possible.
We want to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah,
So
find
we're
it.
still waiting on people to come in. The link is the entire description. Go to them, sub to them. They make great content about missing 411, missing people, all kinds of stuff. So
Thank you.
check them out there, and also to see our podcast once a
Yeah,
month.
I'm gonna toss.
Well, he preps for this. Essentially, a large portion of our channel is basically we do a lot of missing 411. We have a lot of lore videos on a variety of different
I'm
things.
gonna
That's how we got
toss the
started.
link to the podcast
So
playlist.
he is a
Okay.
history
Jack, do you
major.
wanna
I'm a
pin
film
it?
guy, and we
can
kind
do
of
that.
combine our capabilities in order
I can
to
pin
do
stuff in chat.
investigative reporting into
Yeah.
the different elements of
do.
folklore, history,
You're
all
gonna
these different things.
Comment it, and I
So-
can get it.
Yeah, man.
You can
It's
pin
fun.
live chats.
Yes.
You know,
I
this
just
would be
figured out you
great
could
stuff
live
if we did
chats.
before we started.
Yes.
Look, they get. I
Listen,
stream
we
once every
to
month,
give you
like I
to
said.
give you guys an idea of what happened today. We woke up. I made bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, and then we immediately went into the Great Smoky Mountains to record a video.
So we did.
So-
They didn't just come here for the podcast, although that would be worth it. We're doing a large project. For those, I'll go ahead and tell the people who are here in chat because they're the special ones you get to know. The reason I haven't done a sequel to the Missing 411 series is because I wanted the series to be special. So I got the guys who are experts, and we filmed in person on location. And I think it'll be pretty cool. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
what they're
excited.
here doing. So stay tuned for that as well. Another thing to stay tuned for is it's Sunday right now, right? Today's Sunday? Okay. Tuesday night, we're doing another one of these. Typically,
Yes.
it's just once a month. But Tuesday night, we're doing it again on the Lore Lodge on
Yes.
their channel. So again, if you want to see that, and even if you don't want to see that, you should do it at the principal. Description, sub to them, come back later, we'll wait. Because I'm still staring at the chat like, whoa, viewers, cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's that.
How often do you do this again?
Once a month.
Whenever I have a Kickstarter to shill,
Fair.
that's
So-
about it.
Love that.
Well, we did miss last month.
We did
So
miss.
this makes
Well,
sense
we
that we're
missed.
catching up.
Yeah, we missed last
Well, 'cause
month
you were
because
moving.
this
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
the works. So we figured we'll just do 2 now. So again, sub to their channel.
Yeah, we do this. Yeah, we have.
I refuse to go forward until
fairly
you
often.
watch the subscriber mark tick up.
So
Is it take? Do you think it's
I don't
ticking?
know.
instead of
I
continuously
hope so.
plugging,
Yeah.
should we get into the topic of today's?
No,
Okay.
we'll give them.
I'm following his lead on this one.
I was purposely like give it 15 minutes. 7:15. I said start at 7. We'll wait 7:15, and then we'll get into the meetups.
Oh, yep, there we go.
So we have 3 minutes left. Cool. What? Yeah. Well. you know.
Yep.
As you do.
I still love YouTube because we got a copyright claim for a video that was unlisted where I like played a cover of a song and changed the lyrics to be about the skunk ape. And YouTube
That
was
will
like, you
never
can't
go.
do that.
That will never go away.
It-
They do it forever.
I'm looking,
Murder
I'm
me.
like, it's not even a monetized video.
On the second channel, I was doing a playthrough of Alan Wake,
Mhm.
and there was a part where the man was singing the banana song. I think it was a bit like Banana Shanna, Fofana,
Yeah,
whatever.
uh-huh.
And I sung along on cam, demonetized.
Seriously.
Yep,
Jeez.
yep. I guess I'm that good.
We had one where I think we like did a little cover jam session at the end around this time last year,
Yep.
and they nailed us for it there too.
course.
But it's better than TikTok, so.
Yeah. It's
That's
valid.
is better than TikTok. Yeah, fair enough.
Oh God,
It's all
what a
that matters.
terrible, terrible place. Wait, what's the banana? Who owns the banana song? That's a good question.
I could go check my demonetization. See who claimed it.
I almost don't want to know because I'm a little scared to find out the answer on that one.
Oh,
Tangled lore,
Tangled. Like
What?
the
as
movie.
in the Rapunzel movie.
Are you him?
Somebody said Tangled lore in the chat.
Maybe he's Rapunzel.
Maybe. Someone said I was David Spade, which I'm not going to take it as an insult because he's pretty funny. At least
Oh my
he was.
Gosh.
Uh,
7:14. We're getting close there. There.
Just
Are,
don't-
Where is there a
Ridiculous.
yeah, I don't see a bug.
There's a bug on
Oh, it's on the bottle.
Oh,
Yo! Yo!
You guys would not
Yo!
believe how many ladybugs there are
Yeah,
at this cabin.
There's a lot of bugs.
There are so many ladybugs
They're
here.
adorable. Don't hurt them.
I know,
Come on, little buddy.
but
This isn't for you.
there's a lot of those green bugs too, the big like leaf boys.
The concepts of the Bible will
Yeah,
be
this is-
incomprehensible
Yeah,
to
we-
your small size.
We basically we're from southeastern Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia area. We're from the suburbs, so we have basically everything that Tennessee has. We have just 10 times smaller, and that seems to go for the wildlife too. Because I have never seen one of those leaf bugs that big.
Yeah,
It's the
it
one we
was
saw the
pretty
other
big.
day. Like the large one.
A lot of bees. A lot of carpenter
What
bees.
they're referring to is a katydid.
Sure, the ones we have are like this big.
Yeah, grow up.
Yeah, Charles just said Katie did.
Well, I know we need to start, but this ladybug is being very scared. I have to help him.
I thought your ADD was bad.
Look at you. Oh, look at him.
Apparently not bad
Just
enough
a
to
little-
treat.
He's a little fella.
Fair. Well, the only reason for
It's
that is
just a little
because it
guy.
took you a year and
You
a
want-
half
come
to
here.
submit the survey to
My
figure out whether or not you
girlfriend
had
saved me
it,
the ladybug.
which should have in and of itself been enough.
Thank you.
For
Yeah,
them to determine
true,
that we
true.
should probably just send him the medication.
I like how slow mode is on and the chat is still just.
Yeah, this is a 15-second delay on everyone. Oh, there's Dono. Look at that.
Oh, somebody said he's from Warrington, PA, and they have huge katydids. I have never seen one that big.
Well, because we live like basically in Philly.
True.
Thank you, Young Golio, for the $20. I'm really hyped for the Stalker movie. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I am too. Can you tell Evan to re-upload the True Crime Los Santos series? I don't know what that is, but if it's something he took down, I'll beat him into it. So, absolutely.
Somebody did say in the chat thoughts on Mr. Ballin, who was nominated for Creator of the Year.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
We had him on our show back when we were tiny,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
15,000 subscribers on the
Yeah,
channel.
we had a podcast with him last summer.
And
That's good.
I mean, he hopped on despite being him at millions of followers and subscribers. He lived pretty close to us, and I think that might have been
Yep.
part of it. But yeah, he's a great dude, really genuine guy, very professional. I can't say enough good things about the guy.
What's
That's
wild
right.
about your all's channel is you have, like, I'm not saying it to say your channel's small. I'm saying comparatively, you have an absurd amount of influence. Because, like,
There's a lot of memes based off of our content.
yeah, that no one knows is, like, I'm not going to repeat them on this
Yeah,
Christian Minecraft server, but the most important things have come directly from you. And also, Mr. Ballin coming on, a lot of the stuff about missing persons early on that, like,
Yep.
spread to the rest of TikTok and people don't realize came from you.
Yep.
It's kind of weird that your sub count doesn't match. We're going to change that. But it's weird that it doesn't match.
We're getting
influence.
there. We're
Because I haven't
Funny.
collabed with Mr. Ballin, but you guys have.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty
yes,
cool.
yes, Reynold Hughes. We did have Mr. Ballin on the Lore Lodge channel to
Yes.
answer your
Yeah.
question. He
There
said,
you
"What's
go.
that
Look
channel
at
again?" I did see Plaz and Traveling Bard hop in here. They're from
Welcome
some
on.
of our subs, so it's nice to see you guys in here. Thank you for stopping by.
Also, thank you very much to DumbBlonde156, it's a funny name, for the $100 donation. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Keep up the amazing work. It means the world. We're doing it. We're doing it
I
now.
know, it's just funny. It's just funny.
Okay. All right. I think we're about time to get started. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I've meandered.
It
here.
is
there's-
7:18.
Oh, there's Nat. Hi, Nat.
What's up?
Let me
but,
drink.
yeah.
Let me drink it with the label facing out.
There you go. We just as like it's weird that he doesn't have the recognition. I guess we don't have the recognition that you would imagine. It's weird that you don't have a sponsorship from
Dr.
Dr.
Enough.
I think it's just because I've got on my agent about this. I want the sponsorship so bad. I think it's that they're relatively to other soft drinks, a small company
Yeah.
in one city who just distributes locally.
Done.
So I really don't think they're interested in a partnership, which is fine. That's fine. Look, I'm not even saying that I need a link. People don't have to order. I'll just talk about it. And if anyone's in the region, I can get it at a gas station. Just send me a shirt, something for my personal gratification.
Yeah.
Just so I know I'm sponsored.
Do you
Because ever
have-
since I was a kid, that was a thing, Dr. Enough.
Do you have a PO box?
No, I'm terrified of what these people do. I don't trust them enough.
Oh God.
All right.
Don't tell them.
No. Well,
Okay. All right. So, don't. What?
nothing.
Nothing.
Don't. All right. Anyway, you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure.
Yes.
All right.
Do you want to?
I can, or you can, like, whatever you want. Take it away, G-Man. You're the guest of the hour. Why don't you go?
Well, for this episode, we decided to tackle a much smaller, but probably one of the. I'd say this is probably one of the best known books of the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably due to VeggieTales to a large extent for our generation.
Please
but
not again with the VeggieTales.
What?
I can only
Am
take
I
that
wrong?
theme. I
Am
can
I
only
wrong?
take so much of that theme in my head today.
Oh, I got the VeggieTales thing.
You like to talk? Stop.
Otherwise, we get demonetized.
Someone will-
Oh my god.
They might just
Imagine
have,
getting
yeah.
a copyright claim from
Yeah.
the VeggieTales guys. That would be brutal. But yeah, so we're talking about Jonah and the whale.
Yes,
This
yeah.
takes place during a very interesting period of history where the kingdom of Israel was split in two. There was the southern kingdom of Judah, which contained the city of Jerusalem and, of course, the temple to the God of Israel, and then also the northern kingdom, Israel, which contained the older kingdom of Samaria. So at this point, the Assyrians, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, still was not really a threat to Israel. It had not yet expanded. What you're looking at in the Middle East at this time is kind of the beginnings of civilization starting to pick back up after the Bronze Age collapse with the Sea People and all of that. One of the key differences between Israel and Judah was that Judah maintained a very strict monotheistic stance and belief system, whereas the Israelite kingdom was a little bit more willing to accept the idea of lesser gods, not necessarily equals to Yahweh, but lesser gods who were real and there. So that's really a key difference, and it was a big part of the split. Later on, the kingdom of Israel would be conquered by the Neo-Assyrians and the Neo-Babylonians. Judah would hang out a little bit longer, but of course would be conquered itself, and that's when you get into the book of Daniel and the Babylonian exile, the handwriting on the wall, all of that stuff. So that should give you an idea of the time period.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as the location for the book, we're talking about Nineveh, which is in Assyria.
Right.
So you're looking at the northern Mesopotamian region.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
From my understanding, Jonah was a prophet in the northern kingdom. How you talked about it was split into north and south.
Mm-hmm.
He was a prophet within the northern kingdom. And according to my notes I have in my Bible here, it's around the first half of the 8th century.
Yeah,
So-
around 770 to 732.
And to give people who know biblical stuff an idea, it's believed that chronologically the next events that happened after him was that of Elijah and Elisha. So you have the story of Jonah and all of his, and so this is right before people like King Ahab, Queen Jezebel come into the picture and start troubling all that. So it's right before that, the age of the prophets and the prophets fighting back and all of that. So that's just a general timeline.
Yeah,
So-
this is the post David and Solomon period and the pre-Babylonian exile period.
Yes, correct,
Yeah.
pretty much. I saw people say I have something in my teeth. Do I have something in my teeth?
I don't think you have something in your teeth.
No, you're good.
I fell for it. You got me. You did it. You got it. Dang.
He did very recently have a very delicious burger in his teeth.
He makes
to say.
fantastic burgers.
He's a
Those
great
things were scrumptious. That was a great job.
Onion powder, garlic powder, a little bit of chili powder, salt and pepper. Knead it into the beef, and you got yourself one of the best tasting burgers you're ever going to
That
have.
was the best gabagool I've ever had.
They've been torturing me because I'm Italian American, and they think gabagool is a thing, when in reality it's just a weird way of saying capicola.
Nah, it's
Yeah.
come get
Does
gabagool.
it
Gabagool.
not make sense to you that capicola could become gabagool?
What does this have to do with Jonah?
I don't know, maybe Jonah had some
No,
gabagool.
get-
He wouldn't,
get-
it's ham.
We're reading the Bible. Okay.
Jonah could not eat capicola.
Okay, all right. Now that people have a general idea of where chronologically this takes place, with a lot of the books of the Bible, there's this lead-in where it kind of talks about, well, this is in the era of this king, this is in the era of that. Jonah doesn't do that. It immediately starts with the meat of the story. So Jonah 1:1 opens with, "Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me." So that's already our call to action for the story.
Yep.
As mentioned, Jonah was one of the prophets of God in the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, at this time, there were several different communities of people scattered all throughout Israel and other parts of the world. And several of them had given themselves away to different gods. And because of that, a lot of them were practicing idol worship. A lot of them were practicing sacrifices of different kinds. So God is telling Jonah, "You're my prophet. I want you to go to this city and tell the people about me." However, with nearly every other prophet in the Bible who gets a call to action, people like Elijah, as mentioned, or Daniel, or just whoever have you, rather than just saying, sure, God, I'll do that, Jonah is the outlier, because in verse 3 it says, but Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid the fare thereof, and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So
I don't think we know the exact location of Tarshish in biblical terms, but I would not be surprised if it's Tarsus in southern Turkey. Mm-hmm. Just to give you a geographic idea, that would make sense given that he would have been setting sail from Israel, and that would have been just north up the coast.
Okay, and which
into
way would
Anatolia.
theoretically
Nineveh would have been east.
Okay, so that makes sense because he's
Yeah.
going away
Yeah.
as much as he can by water. Yeah. So essentially, Jonah is tasked by God to go to Nineveh, and he says, I'm going to do the complete opposite, and gets on a boat going the other direction. So Jonah's trying to run away from God. Now at this time, and again, this is something to clarify with the Old Testament, things were incredibly different for believers in God than they are now. As a matter of fact, for one, prophets are a feature mentioned throughout the Old Testament that are not mentioned in the New Testament. The age of prophets was over because the purpose of prophets was to prophesy of Christ's coming. So once Christ had already came, there's no further need for prophecy. You had the apostles, you had the disciples, people who taught of Christ. So at the time before Christ, things were much more physical. So some people have questions about a lot of the stories within the Bible. Just because we see this case here doesn't mean it works out as directly or as physically as we have here. In the modern age, it could be more spiritual, more spirit-led. But for Jonah, the consequences were incredibly physical. Because it says in the next verse, but the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. So a great storm appeared, the ship was almost destroyed. And it says, then the mariners were afraid, because remember, Jonah just paid these guys to take him up there. They have no idea who Jonah is or what's going on. And it says, the mariners were afraid and cried every man unto his God, because there were multiple gods at the time, or at least multiple gods of worship. And it says, and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea to lighten of them. Wares essentially are like your cargo, your hold. So they're so desperate, they're throwing their stuff overboard to try to lighten up the ship. It says, but Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. So everyone else is panicking, thinking the ship's about to be destroyed. And
Jonah's just taking a nap.
Jonah's taking a nap.
Snoozing.
He's completely unbothered by the scenario that's happening just above him. So, I should also mention, are you checking Super Chats at all for...
Yeah.
Okay,
to an
cool.
extent, yeah.
My man, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm paying attention, looking occasionally.
Excellent, my guy. All right, making sure. So anyway, they're throwing stuff. Jonah's unbothered. He's asleep in the ship. Verse 6, it says, so the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, what meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise, call upon thy God, if so be that God will think upon us that we perish not. They're in such a desperate place that he's saying, hey, you, whatever God you believe in, start praying to him. It says, and they said, every one to his fellow, come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. So, to my knowledge, lots, you may have better knowledge of this than I do, were essentially like sticks that were like carved on each side. Yep. And the idea was you throw them on the ground, and whichever side they laid up on, it was kind of like a fortune telling to a sense, right?
Yeah.
So they cast lots to see who it is, and the way they cast a lot says it was Jonah. So they throw these lots and they figure out this guy, it's his fault, it's his God. He made his God mad. There's also a lot of confusion about that in the Old Testament, like what's the mention of lesser gods? The lesser gods have power. It's believed by most, including myself, that these lesser gods, that these idols that people worship are some form of demon or something of the spiritual sense. Much lesser than like the Jehovah God, which would be this guy's area of expertise.
Oh, we're talking about demons.
Yes.
Right, sorry, I got like wrapped up in trying to make sure I was right about Tarsus.
Okay.
I was, and Joppa, where they set off from, is today Jaffa in Israel near Tel Aviv. It was actually a crucial battle site during the Third Crusade. But yeah, so demons.
You were right, correct, yeah.
Yes. So,
I said several of
Yes.
the old gods, and I know this is your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Several of the other gods
Yeah.
or lesser gods mentioned, like what the men were praying to here.
Yes. So one of the theories regarding Jewish perception of other gods in the biblical times was that what you were looking at was not necessarily a belief that these were fake, non-existent beings that people were worshiping for no reason, but rather that they were legitimate, powerful, divine entities, but that they were not of God, that they were in opposition to God or outside of God, that they were demons or fallen angels, something along those lines. And so you're not looking at a group of people who necessarily believe in multiple all-powerful beings or something more like Greek mythology where you have a god of the sky and a god of the underworld and a god of the sea, but rather that there's Jehovah up at the top, Elyon, that guy, and then everyone below him is also a god. Mm-hmm. Rather, you're looking at, he's the only one with the power to create and destroy. The others might have the power to influence the material world, but they don't have the power to really force things to happen. They're restricted by their influence over man being purely that they can convince man to do things
by the pre-existing creation. That's
exactly.
their bound. They can influence, they cannot create.
Yes.
An example of that's like there's a bunch of places in the Old Testament where these other gods have power. Mm-hmm. One of the examples, which we talked about over on their channel, again, description, it's the entire description. Was,
we have a video on this, on the entire subject.
We do have a video talking about like demons and like how it all relates to this and whatnot. So, anyway, one of the most famous instances was whenever Moses comes before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, here's my magicians who worship our gods. And these Egyptian magicians cast down wood and it transforms into snakes. Mm-hmm. And that is a biblical example of someone who worships another god having the power to turn stuff into snakes, which a bunch of people will be like, oh, well, that's weird, the Bible doesn't mention that. But it does. It talks about how the dominions and these principalities, these followers of Satan, have power over the air. It says that Satan's the prince of the air, right? Yep. So they're going to be able to influence stuff in it. And a lot of the time, you'll see a lot of these ancient practices out of old gods like Dagon and Baal and stuff like that. They require the sacrificing of children. They required bloodletting and a bunch of other dark, not good stuff. And those gods had influence over the world, but it was the difference between the creator and just things that can meddle with creation. That's the big difference. And
this is something that actually gets repeated in several other local religions. Zoroastrianism has the same concept that you've got theirs is more dualist. You've got a god who's the god of good and order and light, and he can create, whereas the god of chaos and darkness can only warp and twist, which is very similar in a sense to what you see with certain stories like Job, where God has created everything and he gives Beelzebub the power to mess with it, to twist it, to cause problems, but he can't himself create anything.
Now, within this conversation, real quick.
Hold on. The Sphere Hunter said hi. I love your videos. Thank you so much. Anyway, that was just cool. I like your. Anyway, sorry.
In relation to this comment of demons and things like that, where do Nephilim fit into all this? Because I know that's also very much up your alley.
Sorry,
someone said giants.
That came in my ear at the exact same time that I saw a comment that said, how do people not know this? The Bible is basically a fusion of Mesopotamian, Zoroastrian, Egyptian, Greek mythologies.
Oh, no.
No, it's not.
You did it.
So Nephilim is going to get covered later.
Do you want to go? I'll go into Nephilim. I'll go into Nephilim.
I was going to say, because if you want to go on that rant,
no. So there's a number of suggestions regarding Nephilim. The one that I prefer.
Hold it back. No, it's not.
The one I prefer is the suggestion that comes from the Book of Enoch. And this is because if you look at Enoch, it appears to come from the 3rd century or the 4th century BC. This is about the same time that the extant versions of the Dead Sea Scrolls we have were written.
Right.
So we don't actually have an extant copy of the original version of Enoch. What we have is an Ethiopic translation of a Greek translation of a Hebrew text. It is believed that the original Hebrew text comes from the late 4th, early 3rd century BC, and what it describes is a story of this group of angels known as the Watchers. I think there are 20 of them, and then they split up into, they each have lieutenants and lower groups with them, and you get this verse in Genesis 6:1 through 6:4, where they talk about how the mankind spreads across the earth, and the sons of God see the daughters of men, and that they are fair, and they took wives of them. And then you get this immediate change, and you got to remember the Bible did not initially have chapter and verse. It was just one
all once.
long
Yeah, yeah.
scroll. So you get certain points where you can't quite tell what the context is between jumps, and it's been inferred later. But it has that, and it says, there were giants in the earth in those days. The word giants in English is a result of the translation gigantes from Greek, and the word gigantes is the translation of Nephilim. Now, that could come from a couple places. A lot of modern Jewish scholars suggest that it comes from the Hebrew verb nafal, which means to fall. But then you've got Michael Heiser, who's a
Right.
Hebrew scholar, and he says that that doesn't make sense because with
It's
biblical
mentioned
Hebrew
in places.
grammar,
It doesn't, line up.
it just doesn't quite work. So
it maybe works in that verse, but not
Yeah.
in other places the word shows
yeah,
up.
and for example, why turn those who fall into giants?
the giants, it doesn't.
What makes more sense is that the people who wrote the Septuagint back in Alexandria in the Hellenistic period, who were Jewish themselves, who had the oral tradition, who had their long-standing copies of the Torah, that what they knew was some context we don't currently have. And that's why they chose the word giants for Nephilim. Does giants mean what it says in Enoch in the current version, where they were 10,000 feet tall and they crushed acres with
I
their
never
feet?
said that.
No, I'm not saying you said that.
Okay.
I'm saying that
12.
I said that's
12
what,
feet and
That's
a
what
half
Enoch.
feet. Okay,
That's
okay.
what the version of the book of Enoch that we have
Right.
says they were like 10,000 feet tall.
Right.
That's probably because of just being transliterated over time.
Right. It's not as preserved as what was
Yeah.
kept
We're-
in here.
we're
Book
probably-
of Enoch's pretty.
Yeah,
that's why it
it's-
wasn't included in most modern religions.
We're probably looking at people who would have been 10 to 12 feet tall. And you've got to remember, this is the pre-flood period. Pre-flood, whether you're looking at this purely as biblical or purely scientific, the climate before the flood was different. And if you're saying it's the biblical flood and you're not connecting it to anything, we have the writing in the Bible that it was warmer, that it was
Right, yeah.
moister, that we just had a different climate. And then if you look at the science behind it, I like to tie this into the Younger Dryas and Meltwater Pulse 1b. So Meltwater Pulse 1b was a massive flooding event at the end of the Younger Dryas period, which I've seen estimates of. You had 100 feet of sea level rise in about 100 years, as well as 500 feet in 100 years. It's not certain, but it seems like over a period of a couple hundred years, sea levels rose at least 100 feet, which is, if that happened today, it would be utterly catastrophic for the entirety of civilization. The only places that would not be underwater would be like the central United States, Central Europe, like Central Asia.
Right.
You would see an insane amount of devastation from something like that. And it would significantly change the climate.
It's universally agreed upon there was a flood.
Yeah.
Like religion agrees on it, science accounts agree on it. Everyone's like, there was water everywhere at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my dad used to back when he worked in the coal company, they would blast mountaintops and there would be like fossilized palm trees and fish and stuff on
really?
mountaintops in Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much well agreed upon there was a flood. So
Yeah, and what that means, of course, in terms of climate, as we know, when it's warmer, things grow bigger.
yes.
So
correct.
it's very, very possible, very plausible from a scientific standpoint that you could be looking at much taller people back then. And even if the average person was still only 6 to 7 feet tall, you would be capable of having 10 to 12 foot tall
Right.
primates.
The one thing I want to mention about Nephilim, because I know this is way off topic from Jonah, but it was I'll talk about giants any day. Is there was a mention of like in Genesis where it says the sons of God went to the daughters of man, made them wives, and all that. I've also heard the argument. I want to ask your opinion on it.
Sure.
That is a spiritual entering into. Because the word used in the KJV is they entered into, which in the Old Testament is a phrase mostly describing
Yeah.
bow chicka bow
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. But I've heard the argument that is a spiritual sense, that these people who wanted power of God or whatever were essentially possessed in a sense by the sons of God. And that's the Nephilim, and which would also explain
I
the
mean,
ideas.
it would fit with demonology.
It would fit with demonology. It also explains the thing mentioned in Enoch that the Watchers taught mankind witchcraft and
Yes.
black magic. So if they were able to enter in and essentially possess people, that makes sense where that knowledge would have came from.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's that's why Genesis is one of my favorite books. Is it's just like
There's a lot,
so
yeah.
much in there, and I could see the spiritual argument. I would then question why the term giants gets used, but
The only thing I could imagine,
mm-hmm.
this is getting real conspiratorial, but welcome to the channel. The only thing I could imagine is that in later mentions where Nephilim is mentioned,
mm-hmm.
that it is also potentially referencing some form of possession or demonic influence.
I can see that.
Like it mentions Goliath being a Nephilim, right?
I think he's the word used for Goliath in the translation is giant, but the Hebrew word is not Nephilim.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the word that gets translated to giant for Goliath is different. I think Goliath is supposed to be one of the last of the Rephaim, who are a race of very, very tall men. Again,
Just flat out very, very tall.
yeah.
men.
So, well, you got to remember that the Nephilim specifically seem to come from, in some people's opinions, this is my opinion as well as that of some other scholars. There are a lot of people who disagree with this. It's fine. That's what this is all about. But the suggestion with the Nephilim is that they are part angel. That they've, in some way, they have been, the angels have tampered with man's genetics.
They're like half human, half angel. Yes, that's what I've heard a lot of people reference. I don't know how I feel about that. Not because it's like, oh, I refuse to believe. No, angels can obviously fall. That's where demonic entities and the devil comes from. But I don't know how fallen angels in that sense would be different from demonic entities that are already fallen and existent on Earth. Like, I don't know what separates the fallen watchers. And again, it could just be I don't know.
What are the 9 classifications of angels again?
Well, there
You're the one with the video on it.
there are the Ophanim, there's the
Seraphim, Cherubim.
the Seraph, the Cherub, the Prince, the I have the video. Archangel, regular angel. There's the starts with a T. It's like, man, I'm gonna forget all these right now. It's like the
I don't remember the words.
principalities are one of them. Powers. There's the healer one that in a lot of this comes from Catholic lore too, like the specifics.
Yeah, the Catholics did a lot of weird stuff with that. They
sure
got
did.
very granular.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. But
yeah. Point of the matter is that there are the different classifications of angels that appear in different senses, and we do know that there are occasions where angels appear as human beings.
So perhaps what you're
and God does say, "Let us make man in our image." And
correct.
It's
Yeah,
implied that
humans look like
men.
men. There's times in the Bible where angels appear to men, and they don't even know they're talking to angels until they reveal
Sodom and
themselves.
Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah. However, again, okay, so there's cases of like fallen angels like that. We know they become demons, right? We know that a third of the angels fell with the devil, right? That's like where demonic entities and possibly these false gods came from, like how we spoke. So what separates them from the fallen watchers who make wives of humans and then have half angel human giant babies?
I mean, it's a solid question.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I don't have an answer for
Could it
necessarily.
have to do with motivation?
I mean, at the end of the day, yes, for all of it, because everything I'm talking about is beyond my power or my level of existence, right? So, who's to say they don't have capabilities I'm not expressly told about?
There is one very simplistic suggestion, which is if you look at the punishment visited upon the Watchers in Enoch, it might be that nobody really wanted to risk that again, because what happens is certain angels like Semyaza and Azazel are chained and rotated over flames for eternity.
What for?
For having human wives and teaching them things like metal. Like
Isn't
Azazel's punishment is so severe. Semyaza's is so severe because he was the leader. Azazel's is so severe because he's the one in Enoch who supposedly taught man metalworking and how to create weapons and how to use metal to make makeup. Basically introduced war and vanity and all these other things. Yeah. So Azazel and Semyaza both get these incredible punishments. And of course they make a pact that they're like, okay, any punishment visited upon any of us, we agree will be visited upon all of us. And God's like, yeah, that's not really how I do things. You guys go into the pit. You guys are chained up and over fire.
Okay. From your saying that just then,
yeah.
I don't believe the Book of Enoch as a religious text. Yeah. I believe that some of the stories could have been passed down or whatever. So
that's what
Azazel is mentioned in the Book of Revelation, correct?
What?
As being the one in the pit. right? So Azazel is mentioned as like at least a fallen to some degree, and Enoch gives like the story behind that fall.
And Enoch is referenced by the apostles.
Yes, and Jude references it. Actually, Jude quotes the book of Enoch, the first book of Enoch, in the book of Jude.
Gonna pull that one up.
Oh, I know where it's at.
Yeah, do you know the chapter and verse?
Do you want to just go
Who
so
can do it
far
first?
for
Who can do it
Jonah?
first? Come on.
Sword drills. Taking me back to school.
I have. Oh, what?
Haha, loser. You didn't know how computers worked. I'm here. I'm in Jude. Look, boom.
Did you find Enoch?
Yeah,
Okay.
in a second.
Premature on that
I
one.
got it. Now Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about these men, also saying, "Behold, the Lord comes with tens of thousands of his saints."
That's not KJV. Stop it.
It's NKJV.
Yeah, no, I'm doing this one, the older one. And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoke against them. Okay, so, and it continues. He's quoting the book of Enoch in the Bible. So, it clearly was something that they had, that they reference back on.
And of course, Christ would have known it inherently.
Yes, but even if the Book of Enoch was 100% right, as you mentioned, it's been through 3 translations. It hasn't been as well kept as this. And at the end of the day, we've talked about this before. The purpose of the Bible is the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is the overarching purpose. That's why a lot of stuff like Genesis is comparatively abridged, because the purpose that we're not supposed to get confused with is salvation through Christ. That's the overarching point. The rest of it is supplementary to those who have already believed, right? So because of that, I am not hurt, outside of my personal love of giants, that Enoch is not as guarded as the other books of the Bible, because it's supplemental information that has been essentially lost to a degree, at least at the current state.
It's valuable to further your understanding, but not quite to use as scripture.
I wouldn't preach from it, so to speak.
It's interesting, it's context, and you've got to take it with the understanding that it's probably not the original, but that it, somewhere in there's the nugget of what originally existed.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Enoch is the Hobbit of Lord of the Rings.
The Hobbit?
From a movie perspective, not the book perspective, because I know the actual trajectory of the books is totally different.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
I get what you mean.
You want to say that while looking into the camera on the record?
Enoch is the Hobbit to the Bible's Lord of the Rings, from a movie perspective, because the books happen in
I
very
just
different
wanted
order.
evidence that, I just wanted you
to be
held,
crucified,
to be held accountable to that one day.
Yeah.
Oh, the next
do wanna-
job interview you go to, they're like, I'm sorry, we found this clip.
But I wanted to tie it back into where we were with Jonah, because I think it's important to recognize something in here, which is that these men, these mariners that he hires, are from the kingdom of Israel, and yet they're talking about their gods. And Jonah says to them specifically, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord." He's differentiating himself from them. He, for whatever reason, so it seems as though he does not view them as being the same type of Jewish that he is. That he has a recognition that, like.
Do you think that's because he still serves the God of his people, whereas they don't?
They probably would serve that same God, but as one of many, right?
As one of many, because whenever he runs downstairs, he's like, pray to whatever God you have. We'll pray to our gods, plural. So, interesting.
Yeah,
that is a good point. I think that's also interesting. I'm so impressed you brought that back around to Jonah. I thought we were lost forever on that one. I am, okay, so the book of Jonah is underlined by Jonah's failure, and we're going to get into more of his failures in a minute.
We left off with him sneaking away to the bottom of the ship to
Correct.
go to bed.
Yes,
Do a tier
of
list
him
of Bible
sleeping,
translations.
of him sleeping in a way, right?
Yeah.
So you have this element where Jonah is hidden, and running from God throughout this whole story. More of his mistakes he makes, but there's this underline of we forget that he's still one of God's prophets in a time when God was not popular within the region, right? In fact, he was so much so a prophet that God's like, "You're my man.
Yeah.
You're going to be the one I send to Nineveh," which is normally an honor.
Yeah.
He ran away from it like most people would do, but he was still the one God looked to. And even here, he's saying, "I am a Hebrew, my God." He's still holding true to that name. Yep. And as a matter of fact, I'll read the verses where he owns up to that. So it says, they cast lots, they figure out it's him. And it says in verse 8, "Then said they unto him, Tell us. I should give context because we were gone for a while on that. The men have just casted lots, figured out that Jonah is the one who has been wrong to his God. So he says, then said they unto him, tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us.
Interestingly,
What-
that is fortune telling, and it's
It's correct.
very explicitly banned.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Fortune telling is very bad in the Old Testament because it requires the direct contact of
Yeah.
demons and dark spirits. It wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go get my palm read. It was like calling upon the Dark Lord to
Yeah,
tell you
exactly.
the future. Very different, yeah.
What fortune telling in the Bible is what a lot of fundamentalist Christians think Halloween is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you'll hear like, oh, Halloween's devil worship.
Yeah,
and all.
it's
It's
like-
like old fortune telling, yes. This not so-
Dressing up
yeah.
as a sexy cat, no.
Yeah, if you dress up as a sexy cat, it's of the devil.
Okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's fair.
So he needs to be saved then.
Yes, yeah. This is
I have yet to do it.
This is actually a be saved or dress as a sex.
Dress as a sexy cat.
This is an intervention.
This is
It's a very public intervention.
Yes, this is-
Yeah.
We gathered
We're all-
your best friend, your other best friend, and 4,000 of your other
Yeah.
best friends.
Yes.
It's just all 3,719 of us here.
We're
to
here
make you
because we
feel
love
better,
you.
Because we love you. Yeah. Everyone proverbially put your hand on Adam.
Oh my gosh.
All right, this is now a holiness service. We're going to start beating him with clothes and casting devils out of him.
But yeah, I think the lots thing is just kind of funny
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
that it's brought up.
Yeah.
So anyway, they do it, and they're like, "Whose God's this? What's the fault?" And it says, and he responds as you said in verse 9, and he said unto them, I am in Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land, referring to the Creator. It says, then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, why hast thou done this? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them.
this in and of itself is also very interesting in my opinion because they're afraid already, and then when they find out that he's pissed off the big guy,
The Lord.
they're like, oh, that one?
yeah.
Oh, that's bad. Like,
It's also
why'd you do
what's
that?
also interesting about it is the phrasing here, because throughout it says the men pray to gods. They ask, what god are you from? And it's spelled like, again, KJV, it's spelled like little g plural, like gods,
Yep.
whatever. And then in my translation, at least, when it says the Lord, I don't think you can see it, but it's all
font changes.
caps. It's the
Yep.
font changes. It's all caps that he is displeased. The Lord, the Creator of heaven and earth, and says,
Yeah.
and when he found out that he had displeased the Lord,
It's in mine. So I'm using the NKJV just because the organization is a little bit easier for something like this.
Yeah.
But literally it says like their gods. It's lowercase g.
Right, yeah,
It's
yeah.
and then you get like it just tells you like yes
The
they
magnitude
worshipped
of
other
what
gods,
they've
but they were
done,
like they did still differentiate. They did still recognize that this specific one. Which
The-
is just
you-
interesting from
you
a
made the
theological
big guy.
standpoint.
Yeah.
like-
It is weird to think about, like the concept that they still accepted God, but also liked other gods.
Yeah.
But they still had the reverence that whenever he's like, "Oh, I made the top one mad, the
Yeah.
one who made the sea and the dry land," as he said, and then it says they were afraid.
And
They're
to be
like, "Oh."
clear about a specific point on this is not to suggest that Judaism itself was a henotheistic or a polytheistic religion.
Yeah, just at the time.
It wasn't even that. It was
Specifically this.
it was like a sect of Jews
Right.
who accepted this, but Judaism itself, the temple was still in Judah.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
temple
yeah.
was still dedicated
Well,
to the
yeah,
one
like
God,
the main people who were following at this point would have been in line with like
Yeah.
Judaism and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is referencing certain people within Israel at the time, not the religion as a whole. Yeah, correct.
I needed to say that because I knew that there would be somebody who was
so
like,
it'd be
so the Jews
so
were
you think they're
polytheistic.
yes,
And I don't need
which
Mama
is
breathing down my neck again.
which is a conspiracy theory that you get into it. Well,
Yeah.
you have to fight off a lot, I should
Yeah.
say. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so it says their solution to the problem. It says, then they said unto him, what shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea wrought and was tempest. And he said unto them, take me up and cast me forth into the sea. So shall the sea be calm unto you, for I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not, for the sea wrought and was tempestuous against them. Now that's an interesting point to me. They didn't immediately this random guy who chartered a boat with him. He was like, "Throw me out," and they were like, "No." They still tried to row, but they couldn't.
He's like, "Yeet me into the sea," and they're like, "No, we got
Well,
this."
just like
Correct.
in a very non-biblical sense, can we look at it from the perspective for a moment of you are one of these sailors. You're just like you're bringing this guy to wherever he needed to go, and out of nowhere a storm's starting, and he's just like, "Yeah, just throw me over." And, like just as a sailor, you're like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, you're out on a boat. And it starts storming, and the guy's like, "I better get out of here."
It's like, are you
Okay.
okay? Like,
Yeah,
it's
grow
like,
up.
It's like we get that you upset the god, but
the
like
Lord.
that seems a bit extreme. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm over. I'm out.
I'm
Like,
out.
I'm done.
Yeah, kill me right now.
And
Throw
it's
me
like,
out of here.
but I also love the perspective of Jonah really just did not want to be. Like he
Yeah.
would rather have been thrown into the ocean than have to be a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which I think is
about right.
It
fascinating.
tells you a lot about what his opinion of Nineveh was. That he was like,
we'll
I
get
would
to his
literally
opinion.
rather die.
Hold up, put a pin in that one. But yeah, it does tell a lot that he's run from God, and he's like, I guess I have to kill myself.
But he's
That's the
but he's not
solution.
willing to do it himself. He asked them to throw
He asked
him
them to
over
throw
the
him into the
side.
sea.
And
yeah.
God asked his prophet to go to Philadelphia and then go to Kensington, and his prophet said no.
His prophet said, "Throw me in the Delaware."
Ah, yes, those timely Philadelphia jokes that 4 people in the channel.
Someone said thoughts on the World Series, and we're not going to talk about it.
We're not going to talk about it.
All right, so anyway, at this point, we have I can't, thoughts on.
Somebody in the chat did say every time the guy in the middle steers the conversation towards Jews, take a drink. And I would just like to remind you that this is a story about Jews.
It's the Old Testament. It's yeah. I don't know if you knew this, but this whole Christianity thing was kind of founded around one. I'm not.
See, there's a bunch of people who recognize the Philadelphia jokes. I do.
No, they're laughing at me saying
Statistically.
the religion was built on one. Grow up. Okay. Anyway,
Jews in the Bible? No way. I love this. I love your chat.
it's almost like my entire religion is based on. Anyway. What was I even talking about? Yeah, they're trying to row.
Yes.
They're like, no, we won't kill
Yeah.
you yet. And then it says, wherefore they cried unto the Lord. Now it's saying they're talking to the Lord, like the capital L Lord. I hate you all.
Continue.
Now it says that they're talking to the Lord, the men on the ship. It says, wherefore they cried unto the Lord and said, we beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon us innocent blood. For thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea. And the sea ceased from her raging. As soon as he hit water, it worked. It calmed it down. And the reason for it was, and again, looking at it from an application standpoint, is Jonah was afraid of what God had told him to do. He knew it was God's will. He knew that's where he was supposed to go, yet he was still afraid of it. So he tried to do the complete opposite, and that's what he should have been afraid of.
Yeah.
You're either in God's will or you're in the way of God's will, and Jonah thought it would be better to be in the way. So God very quickly made a physical scenario to get him out of the way. So to the degree that they cast him in the sea, and he almost hurt other people because of his arrogance. Now it says, then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, as you would, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows. Oh, wow, disposable cowboy. Thank you for the
I just
$400
saw that.
donation. Wow. My guy. Yeah.
really
You
quick.
are indisposable to us, cowboy.
There's another thing in the chat that I just saw, and you know, with what's going on right now, it's important to note this. Somebody said Jesus was Judean, not Jewish. Those terms come from the same root. But the Jesus himself traces his line all the way back to David, who traces his line back to Abraham, who traces his line back to Noah. like it's essential to the story that Jesus himself is Jewish. That's
Yeah, so like people who, as a matter of fact, it was one of the things that was said by the prophets most often, that he would be of Jewish descent,
Yep.
that he would be of the descent of David, and Abraham, who was the founder of the Jewish
Yeah.
people. So to say that he was not Jewish is to go against the prophecies of the Old Testament.
and in Islam they make the same argument about Muhammad, but it's with Ishmael instead of
Yes,
Isaac.
yeah. So everyone's in universal agreement that whoever is your person has to date back to Abraham, which means if again you're following the track of Isaac, which the Bible and Judaism is, he is Jewish. That's not up for debate.
Yeah.
Are you happy now? Can I continue?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. did that do it for you? Or did we do the dance? Anyway, so after that, they throw him into the sea. It says, then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made vows. So these guys, that was a good indicator for them of which God's the real deal. It says, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And this is the part everyone knows about the story of Jonah. He got swallowed by the fish or the whale or what have you. It's called a whale in, I think, in Kings.
I think so.
Yeah, because I know Jonah gets mentioned in the book of Second
Yeah.
Kings, I think.
Yeah, Second Kings, because it's talking about the king who ruled during the period of Jonah.
Yes, yeah. So it's called a well there. Maybe it's in the New Testament. Wherever he's mentioned again, they mention well.
The two terms might have been synonymous to them
Yeah.
at some point. It's unlikely that people of the 8th century BC knew the difference between a whale and a fish, and that one's a mammal and one's
I was
not.
gonna say
Right.
oh yeah, that's a huge fish. No, that's a mammal. What is
Yeah,
that?
Well, you see, that one actually
What's
gives
a
live
mammal?
birth.
Yeah.
Like,
What'd you say?
that one actually gives live
Yeah,
birth.
I don't think at the time, the scribe who was recording this was like, what classification does it fall under? It's like they're just...
Yeah, especially as they're like, no, that was a whale. What's the
pe-
difference?
pe-
Well, the whale gives live birth. How do you know?
What, were you there?
Were you
Yeah.
there? Like, Jonah was. He's about the only one who would know.
I hate you all so much. We're never doing this again.
Except Tuesday.
Except Tuesday. On his channel in the description.
At the Lore Lodge.
Also, yeah. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What is funny though is I'll hear people be like, whales do not have the digestive tract to swallow a human. It's like that's your problem with the story.
That's your problem with the
That's
story.
your hiccup. That the average whale's throat is too small. That's what breaks this whole religion thing for you. That's my. I'll get the prophecy, the Son of Man, sure, but have you seen a whale's mouth? No way.
And their answer is intently.
Yes. Oh no. But yes. So whale or great fish, he was swallowed by something for 3 days. It says now, chapter 2 is like the most overlooked part of Jonah, and it's something that's important for Jonah as a person. It says, and Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the flood compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The depth closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottom of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee into thine holy temple. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. And the Lord spake unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. So, a lot of people overlook this part, especially if you grew up in Sunday school. The way this story is told a lot is Jonah was cast out in the sea, the fish swallowed him and threw him up on the land. And it doesn't say anything of his mindset change. But chapter 2 shows us that Jonah, so far in the story, got his head right. Mm-hmm. He says, O Lord, I cry to you from hell, which you're in the belly of a fish. That's a pretty bad place to be.
Is hell the word used in there?
Yeah, check it out.
Interesting. I get shale.
Grow up.
That is the Hebrew word.
Correct. That is the Hebrew word for it.
Hang on,
But
what is it?
well, what's it translate to?
In Greek, Tartarus.
No, that's not what I said.
The English translation is hell.
Thank you. All right. Now, anyway. So, I think the reason that they kept the old... what version are you looking at?
NKJV.
I think the reason that they kept the old translation there is because it's understood. It
Yeah.
is not the
Yeah.
normal connotation of
Yeah.
hell. But whenever... Jonah also knows it's not hell.
Yeah.
When he says, I called you from hell, he's using it as an analogy for being in the belly
Yeah,
of
the
the fish.
bottomless pit.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
emptiness.
Yeah.
The void.
So, anyway, he says that he prays to God and says, I'm sorry. He says, salvation is of the Lord. And the reason I want to read all that is, for one, it sounds very apologetic. It sounds very poetic. He says, I'm brought down to the depths, to the bottom of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Which is a horrific way to describe the bottom of the ocean. Right? Like the bottoms of the mountains.
But
and
it's
the bars
accurate.
It's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone who's afraid of the ocean, I'm like, absolutely.
Well, yeah, when you think
I
about
want
it, at the bottom of the ocean, everything around you will appear as mountains on the surface.
Yes,
So it
yeah.
certainly makes sense.
Yeah. So it's certainly apt his description here, but it's also like crushing the
Yeah.
idea of being in this position. So whenever you hear him say that, you're like, all right, this guy got it right. This guy knows what he's talking about. And it says that after he says it and says salvation is of the Lord, it says the Lord spoke unto the fish and it vomited out Jonah onto dry land. So it sounds like, all right, Jonah was messing up a lot. Now he's acting right. So God told the fish to throw him up on land. And that's where it seems the story goes. Was there anything you want to add before I get into chapter 3? So it continues.
Well, quick question.
Yes.
In relation to basically this entire chapter, it mentions obviously he starts in the belly of the whale or the fish,
Right.
and then he is vomited out.
Mhm.
But in this entire chapter makes it seem like at some point he was then pulled out of the fish or ejected out of the fish into the deep, and then somehow ended up back in the fish and the whale, which then ejected him onto dry land.
So there is one interpretation that comes from the Jewish side that suggests that he was spit out by the fish and picked up by a leviathan, is the term used.
Wait, what part are you looking at there?
So basically, this whole chapter, the way he's describing,
How would he know what the
for thou
outside
hast
looked
cast me
like
into the deep in the midst of
if he
seas,
was in
floods,
the whale?
specifically the
Oh.
floods encompassed me all about, and thy billows and the waves passed over me, so he could see him ideally. And then the thing where he said the weeds were wrapped around my head. So the waters encompassed me about, even though to my soul, the depth enclosed around about, the weeds wrapped around my head. It's like seeing all the mountains at the bottom around. It
Right.
would make it seem as though he was, at least at some point for some period of it,
So,
in the sea in and of itself.
yes, okay, so my interpretation of that, and what's always been, for me at least, which
Yeah.
you can have a different point of view, but the way I've always viewed that is Jonah is using a lot of alliteration here. Like he said he's in hell, right? But knowing he's in the belly of the beast. So he may have not necessarily seen the bottoms of mountains to know. Like if you want to get literal, it was probably too dark down there to see anything particularly.
Yeah.
So he could just be like, the sea is where the bottom of the mountains are, so I am down here at the bottoms of the mountains.
He also could have been having visions.
He could have been having visions, could have just been like, poetry he's putting in place.
Yeah.
And also, there was probably a period of time where they threw him into the water and he was in the water for a bit.
Yeah,
before
true,
he was
before the
swallowed.
whale picked
I
him up.
don't think they threw him
And the whale was just like,
into an open mouth fish. They're like, quick, there's a fish, go!
They were trying to be sure he didn't suffer.
I think there was at least like a minute before the fish
It's a
got
good
him.
point. I didn't consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't
No,
like,
they're
say aw. Okay, here comes the Jonah.
There we go. Oh, it's Jeff. Give the throw in.
Yeah, so I think he was in the water for a minute.
So
before
what
he
I'm
got
hearing from
swallowed.
this entire story is that Jonah's really dramatic.
Yeah. God's like, I need you to go do this, and he buys a boat the other direction.
Yeah.
As if staying there wouldn't have done the same effect. He didn't have to run. He could have just not done anything.
And then as soon as he's on the boat and things get rough, he's like, just throw me in.
That's like if I'm like, hey man, can you pass me that drink? And you like move to the other side of the table. It's like you could have just not passed
Yeah,
the drink.
yeah.
That was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to run from it. Yeah, he was very dramatic. Anyway,
Chapter 3.
at the end of chapter 2, it sounds like he's in the right place. So chapter 3, it says, "And the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the second time," because again, the first time led to all that. It says, "Came unto him the second time, saying, Arise, go into Nineveh, that great city, and preach unto it, preaching that I bid thee. So Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh, the place he was supposed to be from the beginning, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey." Massive place, right? It takes 3 days to walk across it. It says, "And Jonah..."
It should be understood that probably wouldn't be like within the walls, but the entire urban sprawl.
Yes,
of
yeah,
Nineveh.
like the expanse of Nineveh. Yeah.
To give context, you can walk from like the bottom tip of Manhattan up to pretty much the top of the island in the same day. So like to take 3 days to
Yes.
get through the city is massive.
Yeah, like you said, it was probably like jurisdiction started out, but there was a lot of people in Nineveh, or the region considered Nineveh at least. And it says, "And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." That was the prophecy the Lord gave him. Go tell them they've got 40 days to get their stuff together. Because at the time, this is also context that comes later in Kings. Again, it's a little hard to study the Bible, which is why you have us, right? It's a little hard to study the Bible and just have one book of it. Because you're like, okay, what's the context? What am I looking at here? But, go ahead.
Whom is overthrowing it?
The Lord.
The Lord.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the context I'm giving. So
We
like,
gotta remember
yeah,
that God nukes Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes,
Like-
yes.
Like literally.
Yeah. So in the book of Kings, Nineveh is mentioned as being a very wicked place. The men are killers. They give themselves over to false gods. They do vain worship. Like Nineveh is doing everything wrong. They're a very wicked city. And God is sending them here, just as God sent Lot and Abraham to Sodom and Gomorrah. God is sending Jonah here so that they can convert, so that they can have the message like, this is, you are heading down a path of destruction, turn around now. And that's, again, context we get from the book of Kings. So with that going in, Nineveh's an awful place. So Jonah's message is, you've got 40 days to get your stuff together. That's the reason Jonah ran away from it eventually. He was like, oh, that's sinful, wicked place. I don't want to go there. So he goes the opposite direction. It's not like he was asked to like go to like a suburban neighborhood.
No.
He's like, "Ah!" So-
He would have understood Nineveh to be a place where idolatry was practiced, and he would have been in danger physically.
yes, yeah.
Like-
they probably would have killed him if he would.
My
if he did
guess
not
is he
have the
seems to
Lord.
think that like torture was a possibility.
Yeah.
because he tries to.
He thought physically running away from a location was a better option. Yeah. It says anyway. And you got 40 days. Yes, it says, so the people of Nineveh believed God. This is the part Jonah didn't expect to happen. And proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them even to the least of them. Okay, sackcloth was a tradition seen in the Old Testament. It's along the lines of renting clothes. So it was common whenever someone was mourning. Like, for example, if you were to hear a family member died or a close friend died, you would rent your clothes. So, like, in agony or misery of your friend, you would physically tear your clothes apart. There's several parts in the Bible where it talks, like, some of those powerful moments in the Old Testament talks about, like, David ripping the king's coat over his friend, like, ripping something of such value, but he's still rending it over his friend. So, like, you would tear off your clothes, and sackcloth was essentially, it was called sackcloth because it was like sack material. You can imagine like a
It was
potato
like basically
sack.
burlap, yeah.
Yeah, it was like burlap. And sackcloth is something you would wear if you were in a time of mourning, if you're at funerals, because you could fall in the dirt, you could scream, you could tear at it, it didn't matter. It was a purposefully impoverished clothing to wear whenever you're in a time of mourning. So it says here, the people of Nineveh not only believed in God, but they were so convicted by their own sin and wrongdoing that they put on sackcloth in mourning for themselves for how bad they've been acting. So Jonah was afraid, like, oh, these guys are going to kill me. And they're so repentant that they are mourning their own existence. Like, so there was literally nothing to fear. Quite the opposite, actually. Jonah's like a superhero among these people.
They're,
at this
they're
point.
basically in a state of learned helplessness, it seems.
Yes, which is why God didn't just zap like a
Yeah.
bunch of people interpret him to do. That's why he sent a prophet to go tell them and to teach them. And they're very receptive to it. It continues on, it says, they put on sackcloth from the greatest of them to the least. For word came unto the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him, and covered him with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. Ashes is again the same way. There's a lot of ash tradition that's still practiced even in the modern day in some religions and beliefs. But at the time, it was again a sign of mourning. Like literally, it's you can't be more sad than wearing a potato sack sitting in ashes.
No.
So the people of Nineveh are so on board with what Jonah's saying. The king, it says he throws down his robe, puts on sackcloth, and sits in ashes. Jonah literally could not have prayed for a better outcome.
Yeah.
He shows up to the city. He's there one day, and the king's like, "You're right. I see."
It's an interesting suggestion too. I'm curious. I'm going to look into the Assyrian side of the history, but not right now, obviously, because that's the whole thing. But
It's a whole thing.
it's just a lot of reading really, really, really old documents. But it does suggest that the people of Assyria would have recognized the Jewish god's existence, which wouldn't be unlikely,
Right.
considering that pagan cultures generally do acknowledge the existence of other cultures' gods.
Right.
Sometimes as, oh, well, those are our gods by different names. Sometimes, well, we have our gods and you have your gods.
Right, yeah.
Most pagan gods, at least in Europe, that's, again, my area of expertise, most pagan gods were very, very, very localized. And then you have...
We're going to slide this way and get a
Could you grab
drink.
me some water
Yes,
too?
yeah,
Thank
continue
you.
talking.
So most pagan gods were extraordinarily specific. Like there was a god specifically of the Seine River. There was a god of specifically the mouth of the Seine River. There were gods of specific rocks in Ireland. So each tribe, each family would often have some sort of deity that it worshipped. And these could sometimes be seen to have parallels, with other religious figures in other places, but there would always be some overarching ones. So while you would have extraordinarily regionalized pantheons of gods, you would also have, for example, in Celtic culture, Epona is observed from southern Iberia, so southern Spain, all the way to the borders of Germania, all the way up into modern northern England. So you have these deities that are recognized in some cases very broadly, like essentially globally, and then you have deities that are much more localized and small. So it seems as though El, Yahweh, this figure by many names, would have been recognized probably as one of those gods that was omnipresent, but the Jews specifically would have worshipped this god as the one true God. All the others were nothing more than demons or angels.
I love it when you do that.
What?
Just that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
He's good at it.
He's good at it.
Yeah.
Also, sponsor me, Dr. Enough. That's green now.
So I'm reading ahead,
Okay.
and I have questions, but I'm going to hold them.
About Dr. Enough.
Yes. Where can I get them? And what kind of flavor?
Well,
do
as
they
a
have?
matter of fact,
I mean, speaking of reading ahead, I do want to point out possibly my favorite verse in the Bible, which is, "Then God said to Jonah, 'Is it right for you to be angry about
we'll
the
get.
plant?'"
Shh,
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I know. It's just a funny
In
line.
this
Spoilers.
one, it's a gourd.
Yours is gourd?
Yes. KJV.
Oh.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at that. Look who wins again. Label facing out once again.
There we are. That's what it's all about, baby.
I wonder what the ASB has for that. I'm curious.
Oh, someone asked us the flavor just green. Honestly, I've been drinking this my whole life. I have no idea what flavor this is.
To me, it tasted like a lemon lime. It was
It's like a
lime.
lemon lime. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a Sprite-ish thing.
And God said
Only
to Jonah,
not sugary. It's like natural.
wait, it gets even better in the ASB. And God said to Jonah, "Dost thou well to be angry for the gourd?"
That's how to be angry for the gourd.
Dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? It's going on a shirt. I'm putting it on a shirt.
Dost thou well?
Dost thou well to be angry about the
I
gourd?
thought the ASV was like supposed to be modern English.
It is.
Dost thou well to be angry for the gourd?
Oh, that's the same in the KJV.
Yeah.
It's the same line. Yeah.
The ASV is well, the NASV does the modern English thing. The ASV does kind of like try to mimic the KJV in its verbiage.
Okay. Then what? Whatever. Anyway, okay. Not arguing. Anyway, continuing. So anyway, we were like everything's going perfect for Jonah. The king's in sackcloth and ashes. Exactly what this all would have happened if Jonah just did it right. But he had to go through the whole whale thing because he didn't listen to God. Literally go through the whale thing.
Yeah.
So it says in verse 7, and he caused it to be. This is the king of Nineveh. He caused it to be proclaimed and published through Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, Let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed nor drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth and cry mightily unto God. Yea, let them turn every one from his evil way and from the violence that is in their hands. Who can tell if God will turn and repent and turn away from his fierce anger that we perish not? And God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God repented of the evil that he said that he would do unto them, and he did it not. Okay. Jonah's like, man, these guys are awful. I'd literally rather be eaten by a fish than deal with them.
Meanwhile, they're like, yeah, this is reasonable.
He goes to them and says that you all have been sinful. And again, you can look at the history around it and see the context. A lot of these false gods would require things like bloodletting. They would require, in some cases, child sacrifice, some of them. In a lot of cases, there would be these ritualistic group times together that were not consensual. All kinds of wicked and sinful acts. So Jonah comes, and instead of just striking them down, Jonah comes to them, tells them of their sin, and the king is so moved by this, he says, you know what? Everyone in the entire country, you're not eating food until you ask God for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. All of us, all of Nineveh. That's literally the best outcome. And it says, God saw this, and despite all of the murder, corruption, and sin that they had done, he forgives them, of course, because they asked for it, because above all else, God is a God of mercy. So he sees that, and it says what he would do to them, he did it not. He was like, all right, they turned from it. Okay, so I know you guys have read ahead, so you've had a spoiler for this, but for those at home, I want you to ask yourself a question. If you were Jonah right now, you had done this, you had went out, you tried to run from God, and a fish threw you up on the coast of the city you were trying to run from. You walk in there, and for one day you're like, God's going to kill you, and then the entire nation's like, wow, God's going to kill us. And they're all like, wow, thank you so much, kind stranger. If you were Jonah, what would your current feeling towards the population of Nineveh be?
I feel like at that point, this is my perspective, would be, wow, okay, so they're going to do it. They're doing
the thing.
They're doing the thing.
They're doing the thing.
I'm feeling a little silly that I was a little silly, goofy boy.
Perhaps
and
even goofy.
Didn't realize that I was a little too silly and ran away when it was fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've done all that. And also, you're a prophet of God already. You know the dude's got power. Yeah. You know the dude's got power. You know God has power.
And he's literally in your corner.
You are his guy
yeah.
to the degree he's like, I want you to be the spokesperson for me.
Yeah.
To these people, right? And like he's a prophet of God in the Old Testament. He has seen God work miracles prior. But he's still like, I think I'm gonna run from him. He does that. A fish swallows him and throws him up on the coast of the city that he was supposed to go to. So he goes and he tells them, they're all like, wow, you're right. Because what had happened is God knew Nineveh was a bad place to be. It's not like Jonah would have got there and got murdered and God would have been like, oh, I didn't think of that. Never considered that Nineveh's a rough city. Man, someone should really do something about that.
You don't fix a toilet that's not broken.
Yeah, exactly. Like he would be like, that's why he didn't want to go. Yeah. Oops. Like that wasn't part of the scenario. But
oh wow, I didn't realize it was that bad.
Oh, that's why he tried to run away. Oh
wow.
No.
Jeez.
Yeah. Man, my bad, dude.
I would have sent you somewhere else.
Yeah, up there in heaven looking at him like, my bad, man.
This one, on me.
Yeah, this one was totally my bad.
My me.
Yeah, so...
I have made mistakes.
God knew that Nineveh was a bad place, and he was preparing their hearts. Who knows what happened in Nineveh in the weeks prior to Jonah showing up? Maybe they had a famine. Maybe they had, maybe everyone just became depressed. Maybe people just started being like, hey, maybe this whole, gratification of self forever isn't good for us. Maybe we need a purpose. Maybe there's something more. God had already prepared their heart that when a man of God walked into the city and said, you've got 40 days, that was enough. Clearly, you can't just walk up to some stranger and be like, 40 days, and they immediately oh, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they'll be like, what, till tax season?
Yeah, what are you talking about? Get out of my house.
Yes.
he designed the hoodie while he was set. The reason he's been quiet for the past 10 minutes is because he went. Pull it up. Pull it up. He went on Teespring and designed the Gourd hoodie. We're not even to that
Do
verse
you want to
yet.
bring it closer to the...
When we get to the verse, we'll bring it
There
up.
we go.
Okay. Are you ready to be a part of the class?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Do you have enough to share for the whole class?
We are never doing this again, okay? Anyway, so, like, God knew that. Like, who knows what happened in Nineveh? But it was enough that whenever a man of God walked in and said, "You've got 40 days," they were like, "You're right. That's it." So, I mean, this was all prepared out, and
All
God
he needed
forgave
to
him.
hear.
And you would think that Jonah would understand that. But how? I'm sure you all have already had time to place your bets on how Jonah feels. Well, in chapter 4, it opens and says, "But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry."
Jonah
This-
just cannot take a win.
This guy, like, yeah, he was a servant of the Lord. Yeah, he told the guys on the boat, like, "Oh, but I am Hebrew and a servant of God." But this man, to be, like, mad that the people aren't going to die.
If there's anything that is like my bad on God's part on this one, it's choosing Jonah as a
It's involving Jonah in any of this.
like the only reason he did this was to challenge himself because like you could have definitely found someone better.
yeah,
suited.
like, you'd hope. I mean, maybe. I don't know. By the time Elijah comes along, which is the next story in here, there's like no one who's willing to talk about God
Really?
except Elijah. Yeah, it's pretty bad. they were in a pretty bad place at this time.
Not even anyone in Nineveh.
Jonah might have been the best man for the job, unironically.
He's the only one who would be like tolerant of it.
He's the only one who would like go near the water.
Granted, if you're in a position where the person most willing to do it is like running from you and willing to just be like thrown into the ocean instead of do what you asked them to do, you're in dire straits, man.
Hey, it was a bad time.
It was a bad time to be
It
God.
was a bad time.
Bad time to be God.
Okay,
That's
all right.
blasphemous
All
right
right.
there.
That was probably We'll move on from that one.
Yikes.
All right. Anyway, so I hope you all are still enjoying this and having a good. I see memes popping up and like LOLs and stuff. So I saw someone say Jonah, the king of L's. So
King of apples.
all right. Anyway, so he's like, "This displeased Jonah exceedingly." Even after everything, it says, "And he prayed unto the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Lord, was not this my saying when I was yet in my country? Therefore I fled before unto Tarshish, for I knew that thou art a gracious God, and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repentest thee of evil." That should be that should be his prayer. He should be like, wow, he should have seen Nineveh and been like, "Wow, God, you are slow to anger and merciful." And yep, that should be the end of it, but he keeps going.
No, I want to see heads roll.
And he keeps going. It says, "Therefore now, O Lord, take, I beseech thee, my life from me, for it is better for me to die than live." Jonah sees all these people not getting destroyed,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Kill me." Immediately.
It's like, this is all I wanted was to watch the city
I
collapse.
wanted to watch people die so bad.
You promised me the John Cena SmackDown, and I got nothing. I got potato sacks and ashes.
I told them they were going to die in 40 days, and nothing happened. They did
Jonah's
die.
like, "I have been given the easiest job in the world. I have succeeded, and I am pissed about
I'm
it."
so,
He's like, "I tried so hard to fail."
So it said Jonah's a drama queen. Yes, it's absolutely.
Someone
100%.
said more of this, Father Wendigoon.
I'm
If you're a
glad you
newcomer
like
to
it.
this stream, we in fact do this once a month over on our channel, The Lore Lodge. So,
Go to the description. The only thing in the description is linked to their channel.
and there is a weird Bible playlist.
There
over
is
there.
a weird Bible playlist over there. We do this once a month over there on his channel.
I'm
And we
considering
do it every
joining
month.
in the future just to say vaguely blasphemous
Exactly.
things to make things.
That's
you guys
fantastic.
funny.
So we do that over on their channel. Check it out. We do this all the time. This is very standard. I want to do it over here because not a lot of people know. But yeah, well, it'll be on their channel in future episodes. And 2 days on Tuesday, we're going to do it again. Anyway, on his channel. So go to subscribe to his channel. Their channel.
Our channel.
Whatever. The Aiden's channel.
The channel
Not
belonging
them,
to Aiden's.
them. Yes. Okay. Anyway.
You're being told to get rid of your Astroworld album because it's demonic.
Great. Glad
I think you should get rid of the
glad we're on
trash.
topic. All right. I'm talking about the Lord. All right. Anyway. Okay, so Jonah's like, hey, you didn't kill these guys. I'd rather die. What's funny about Jonah is he's what a lot of people think God is, right? There's a bunch of people who like critique the Bible and stuff like God's just an angry guy, like points at people and zaps them off the earth if he doesn't like them. When that's literally what Jonah wishes God was doing.
Yeah.
Despite, and that's the hypocrisy of it, despite Jonah being worse than them. Because Nineveh was sinful, and then they saw their sin, and then were very repentant about it. Jonah was sinful, and then was sinful, and then said, kill me.
Which, in and of itself, is sinful.
He's on a roll.
Which is, again, interesting why God would choose a non-repentant man.
Yeah.
I will say God does make a habit of choosing rather unlikely people for his prophets. Like, Moses didn't want to be a prophet.
There's no one to be a prophet.
Daniel was just kind of a guy. Like,
To be fair, sometimes the best leaders are those who don't want a job.
he has a habit of picking people who don't want
I think
power.
it's the people who don't want the job, and I also think it's the fact of the matter that a majority of the people will become afraid or fearful whenever they're faced with these large tribulations and challenges in life. And it's easy for like me as a modern day Christian to look back at Jonah and be like, wow, what an idiot, right? But then as a Christian, you have to ask yourself, what of your enemies? What are the people who hate you and dislike you? Think of the person or group or like the easy suggestions like Osama bin Laden, right? Like a mass killer. But just think of like the most evil person you can imagine, the person who hates you the most. If right now they were like, I'm sorry, God, and God forgive them, would that just roll off your back? Would you be like, okay? Yeah, there you go. That's the point. That's the point of the story. Yeah. Jonah, it's easy for us to look back and criticize him because this is the story we're given, but he was also a prophet of God. He was one of the people who followed God his whole life. He did what was right, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes to a group of people who have done the opposite of that. People who, if you look at history, had fought his people for years and years, literally at war against them.
Yeah.
Like, he's more than likely watched people he knows die by their hand.
Yep.
So now he goes to them, and God says they're forgiven. And Jonah has to live with that. Again, it's easy for us to be like, wow, what a loser, but...
It is tough. But the only difference there, at least between us as moderns versus then, is like, because he was a prophet, he got the definitive confirmation from the big guy of like, yeah, no, they're good.
Right.
Which is like, yes, at that point in time, especially if the circumstances were that severe, is still a big pill to swallow.
Correct, yeah.
But at least you get some form of definitive affirmation of like, they're not just like saying it and then, maybe.
Yes,
It's like,
correct. Yeah, they're pretty on it right there, right? And like I say like it's hard for me to do, but realistically as a Christian, I understand forgiveness is greater, God is greater than, any sin we can commit and all that. So, I like to think that I would be like, yeah, absolutely, welcome to the family.
Yep.
But again, easier said than done.
Yep.
That being said, that does not condone his actions that he commits right here. Because immediately after he gives that prayer, it says, Then said the Lord, Dost thou well to be angry? It says, So Jonah went out of the city and set on the east side of the city, and there made him a booth, and set under it in the shadow, till he might see what would become of the city. So Jonah's like, all right, God, I'm going to go sit on that hill, and you can kill him whenever you want. Whenever you feel like it, just zap. I'll be right here ready to go. So he goes and he sits on the hill. It says, And the Lord God prepared a gourd and made it to come up over Jonah. It's like a big leaf, a big plant, right? To come up over Jonah, that it might be a shadow over his head, to deliver him from his grief. So Jonah was exceeding glad of the gourd. And we see here, God does this thing a lot, especially with the prophets, where he'll set up an object lesson. He will put something in their path that is to teach them a physical lesson, right? So Jonah here is acting not at all the way a prophet of God should act. Not at all any follower of God, much less a prophet should act. He's like, why? Kill these people now. So Jonah goes and he sits on a hillside. He's like, I'll wait.
Yep.
I'll wait.
He's sitting with a pile of popcorn ready for Castle Bravo. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
he's like, burn it, go ahead. I'm ready. I read about Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's get round 2 going. Come on. So he's sitting up there on the hillside, And it says God prepared a gourd. So a big leaf comes because he's in the scorching heat, and he's like, "Thank you,
warm
God.
over here.
What a nice little umbrella we have here." So he like cuddles up under the umbrella. He's like, "What a nice shade," while I watch people burn to death from on top of this hill.
They may get toasty, but at least I'll be nice.
I'll be nice and cool. So he's sitting underneath this gourd, and this is the object lesson God setting up. That's why he gave him the gourd. It says, so Jonah was exceedingly glad of the gourd. But God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and it smote the gourd, and it withered. And it came to pass, when the sun did arise, that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah, that he fainted, and wished in himself to die, and said, "It is better for me to die than to live." All right, so once again, the drama queen comments are once again relevant.
Yes.
Because what's happening here is Jonah's like, "I can't wait for these people to die, and God gave me a leaf. He must want me to watch them die too." That is so thoughtful of him.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God, for this leaf. So he's curled up under his leaf. He's there all night.
Yeah.
It says the next morning a worm comes and eats the leaf. And so he wakes up and he doesn't have his leaf. So it's hot.
I guess I'll die.
And it says a wind comes, so sand's getting blown in his face, and he says, "I want to die." So Jonah's in the city, and the people are like, "Wow, you're." This is a scenario. Jonah walks in, believe in God, and the king's like, "Wow, Jonah, we now believe in God." Jonah's like, "I'm gonna kill myself." So he's like, "God, you better kill me right now, or else." So he's like, "I'm gonna sit on that hill, and you're gonna kill these people right now." So he goes and sits on the hill, and he's like, "I got my leaf." And then the leaf's dead, and he goes, "I'm gonna kill myself." Without hesitation.
This entire story is really relevant to the mentality of our entire generation. Like, Gen Z would be the type of people to wake up, find their leaf, and just be like, "I'm done."
This is it. I'm
this is
out.
it.
I check out. Yeah.
This sucks. I'm out. Like,
me after a single video gets age restricted. I'm going to do it right now.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm checking out. Yeah. So anyway.
For that reason, I am out.
Yeah. So anyway, are people enjoying the? Yeah. I see like
Oh, right, you made it
LOLs.
so,
It's lol. Do people
yeah.
seem relatively interested?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are having a good time.
Okay. Good. I hope so.
YouTube is gonna have a field day with this episode.
Somebody said, "Give Jonah some Prozac."
Jonah needs help.
He needs to calm down. Literally a leaf died, and he's like, "This is it.
This is the worst thing that's
I've
ever
been a
happened.
prophet. I fought through war. I was swallowed by a fish. This leaf was my last straw. This leaf was the tether holding me to sanity. And now that it's gone, I am too."
I'm just imagining him looking at the worm and just being like, "How could you?"
I do have to plug VeggieTales really quick. It's very funny in VeggieTales because he's like, they do these things as comedic depictions.
Yeah.
So he looks up and I can't remember the words exactly, but the Jonah asparagus or whatever looks over at the gourd and he's like, "What?" And the worm's a character from the show, like a talking worm. The worm's like, I'm just on the clock. I'm here as much as the reason as you are. It's my job. Just clock it.
I don't make the decisions.
I just
follow orders.
do what I'm told. I got swallowed by a fish and thrown up here too. So.
Jonah's like, "Listen, I had a really bad day getting here. All I wanted to see
It's funny
was
to me-
some mass death."
It's funny to me that when he was swallowed by a fish, he's in the fish like, "God, I see the arrogance, the insolence of my ways. Rise me up from these deaths, O salvation." And then the plant dies, and he's like, "This is it. I'm at my limit."
That makes me question the honesty and the legitimacy of the words he said within the whale.
Me too. Yeah. That's the point I was getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that whenever he's in the wet, this also goes to a message of a lot of Christians, right? Whenever you're in the dumps, whenever you're in a bad situation, it's real easy to be like, "God, if you get me out of this, I'll go to church every Sunday. I'll knock doors. I'll be a part of your ministry, blah blah blah." And then when you're doing good, like, "Oh, Okay.
No.
And just forget about it, right?
Yeah.
People will say anything when they're down and out. And he was in the belly of the whale and gave. That's the reason I wanted to read the whole chapter, because it's very poetic and he sounds so earnest and beautiful. And then as soon as he has to do what God wants him to and God's will's done, he literally wants to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just need to bring this up because VeggieTales was mentioned, and I was trying to find the essay. The essay
Oh,
we
the
read.
essay, yeah.
There's an essay we read about like why Bob
We also
and
still
Larry
have to
aren't
finish the
going to
chapter,
heaven.
but
Yeah.
we'll get there.
But I just really need to bring this up because in looking for that, what I came across is ChristianChat.com, which, as you can imagine, has very very reasonable questions like, are VeggieTales of the devil? And the response, yes, they are liars. Their two main characters, a tomato and a cucumber, are both fruits. They are lying to children and giving them false expectations of what a veggie is, not to mention there is a grape and probably some other fruits as well. The rest of them are not satirical and are genuinely accusing VeggieTales of witchcraft.
I also just want to acknowledge that somebody just said, in relation to this experience Jonah's having, 13 versus Y.
Whoever that
Oh,
was,
no.
ban him. It's probably one of my mods, honestly. It's probably you over there on the chat.
Oh, I wish.
All right, anyway.
Oh, and people are criticizing you for saying tomatoes a vegetable.
I was reading
I know.
But-
I'm just letting you know.
I was
Let
reading.
it go, okay? Let it go.
Anyway, so we still have to finish the chapter.
Are you... All right. Are you typing something in the chat? He said... This man... We're not
I'm a businessman doing business.
Is it going to pop up for me in a second so I can pin it?
Yeah.
Is that how it works? Can I pin stuff? What? How long is the chat on a delay for?
I don't know.
It's got to be at least like 15, 20 seconds.
It also might like catch it as like promotion or something. So we
Oh,
never know.
is it a link?
No.
Oh.
But I don't know. Who knows? It might not pop up. It's whatever.
Live Wendigoon reaction.
Okay, I was good.
From Ted
Live
Kaczynski.
Wendigoon reaction.
I'm at my limits, but I'm at. Okay.
Okay, Jonah.
Anyway. Now I get it. I'm on Jonah's side now. Jonah, you two were the Nineveh people. I get why he was like that now. All right. Anyway, he made the shirt for the verse I'm about to read. All right, so all this happens. Jonah's like, I want to die. It's hot out. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it says... We good? I'm sorry. All right, the dishwasher started beeping. I thought it was a smoke
Oh.
alarm. I'm like,
Yeah, I was
oh
gonna say, we gonna blow up?
no.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
what
thought we were about to die. All right, my apologies. Just the
This is-
dishwasher.
This is entirely Jonah's fault.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So
Jonah is smiting us from the beyond.
yeah, probably. All right. So here we go. After he's like, I'd rather die than have my leaf get hurt. One of your favorite verses of the Bible, both of you. Jonah 4 verse 9. And God said to Jonah, dost thou well to be angry for the gourd?
I'm just trying to imagine that Jonah's just sitting there being all emo under the withered gourd, and God's like, Jonah, dost thou well?
Dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? That's also, like, that's the other point. And, like, again, everyone's like, oh, God's like a giant, like, hitman in the Old Testament. No, he's not, for a lot of reasons. Like, we just saw his mercy towards Nineveh. And if anyone deserves to get zapped right now, it's Jonah.
This entire passage just reads like an argument between like some 14-year-old
Yes,
going through their
yes,
emo
absolutely.
phase
Oh, yeah,
and
I know.
their dad.
I love the fact that Jonah would be an absolute My Chemical Romance fan.
Literally, and God said to Jonah, dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? And Jonah goes, I do have a reason to be angry, and you know
Yeah.
what? I should die.
Yes, yeah, okay, so, all right, I'll continue that. So God says, dost thou, which again, like, this is God's mercy that his prophet is doing all this, and he's just like, dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? Like,
He's just so disappointed.
dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? And it says, and he said, Jonah says, I do well to be angry, even unto death. Jonah was like, his leaf died. It's blowing sand in his face, and he's like, I'm going to kill myself. And God's like, is this reasonable? And he goes, yes, I'm going to kill myself.
This Jonah passage has made me realize what it's like to be a parent for a teenager,
Yes.
and I have no children of my own as of yet.
When I have kids and they're like upset over something ridiculous, I am going to approach them and say like,
Does
"Does
thou
thou
want
want
to
to
be
be
angry
angry
for
for
the
the gourd?"
Yeah.
And they're gonna be like,
Oh.
"Dad, what?" Gonna name my kids Jonah, all of them,
Does thou want?
just so I can do this.
All of them.
They will be getting gourds.
Jonah 1, Jonah 2.
I was going to say
3.
Jonah 3. What do you want?
Okay, anyway. Ignoring that. Even unto death. Then said the Lord, Thou hast had pity on the gourd.
It's just the wording is so funny. You know that the poor like theologians writing this for King James were just losing it.
Thou hast had pity
Like,
on the gourd.
like they're bringing this work of art, this first true translation directly into English to the King of England.
All the live chat's just
And he's-
pity on the gourd.
He's flipping these beautiful parchment pages written on vellum in ink by the beautiful hands of the monks, and he's like, the gourd? What?
Dost thou will to be pity on?
Do you think we're the first people to meme Dost Thou Have... or,
Probably.
Like, that whole... No,
To this audience, absolutely.
No, but like in general, like could you... Like do you think several hundred years ago people were like...
Like they were
Dost Thou
giggling
well to be
like,
angry?
yeah.
To be on, like...
There's a good chance especially like in the monasteries back when these were handwritten.
Yeah.
You know, someone's like, "I'm in Jonah 4." The gourd. It is like, yeah, of course, like as a Christian, the Bible is like a holy book, and
Yeah.
our book. People have died for it.
We can
But
still
I just-
laugh at the funny.
Well, of course. But
okay.
I'm saying that
Yeah.
to say it is canonical and factual that people have died for the phrase "pity on the gourd."
See,
And they
I
did
also
not die in vain.
They did not die in vain.
I do like the American Standard translation of "Thou hast had regard for the gourd."
Very good. Alright, that's pretty alright.
All right,
Alright.
we have two left.
We have two left. There's literally 2 verses left to go.
The Amplified Bible.
Are you
You
just
had compassion on the plant.
No, it does not say that. Are you serious?
Compassion on the plant.
Hold up. God said, Joe, do you have good reason about the loss of the plant? And he said, I have a very good reason to be angry enough to die. And the Lord said, you had compassion on the plant.
This is probably the funniest.
Are you just flipping through the translation?
Literally what I'm doing right now.
You haven't participated in 30 minutes. He's like, all right, Nephilim Giants merch time.
Wait, no, the
Giants
complete
gourd.
the complete Jewish Bible that has you're concerned over the castor bean plant.
No, it does not.
You're concerned over the castor bean
Wait.
plant.
Which cost you no effort.
Which costs you no effort. God's like, you literally did nothing to earn this plant, and now you're upset over it.
These translators were memeing. Concern, compassion, and care.
Thou art grieved for the ivy.
Okay, so we're definitely not the first.
Thou art grieved for the ivy.
Wait, how do they phrase that? Though?
They're making it up. Thou art grieved for the
Is it
ivy.
right for you to be angry because the plant died?
Because the plant died. Who's that?
This is
didn't
New
even
Living
try.
Translation.
They didn't try. That doesn't count.
Then the Lord said, you feel sorry about the plant. Like, New Living Translation is the Bible for 4th graders.
grieve. Everyone's like, not the ivy. Anything but the ivy.
Oh boy!
castor
Oh
plant.
wait, the Wycliffe Bible. So for those who don't know, John Wycliffe was one of the first like the proto Protestants. Came along before you had Martin Luther and all that, and he was one of the first people to translate the Bible into English. But he
Right.
didn't do it in the way the King James was. He did translate it from I think Latin into English.
Right.
But he did produce I think the first English.
He did do a
language
good job.
translation. Yeah,
He
it's a
did a good
decent
job.
job that he did. But this one is "Thou art sorry on the ivy, in which thou travailedest not, neither madest that it waxed."
Hold up, we'll get to that in a second. You're skipping ahead.
Hang on.
Sorry,
Are you sure this
sorry.
isn't Shakespeare's translation?
No, that literally it's
Well,
like,
Wycliffe was like at the same time.
He was-
Well,
he was
not
a
at the
few
same
hundred
time.
years before,
The
but yeah.
language
The
was
language was
similar
similar.
at
Got
the
it.
time, and Wycliffe was one of the like earliest. The people who did the KJV would have had the Geneva Bible and the Wycliffe Bible previously before the KJV.
Got it.
More than likely the Geneva, but Wycliffe was around at the same time. Sorry for the Ivy sounds like a cool Midwest emo band.
Yeah.
Sorry for the Ivy.
Very fitting.
Yeah.
And they should have a song named Jonah.
I have
Absolutely,
one
yeah.
last one. Ready?
Go ahead.
This is from The Message.
I hope you all learned everyone's F, I guess, for the Ivy. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
that
so
is
this is
a shirt, F
this
for the
is the
Ivy.
same passage in The Message version of the Bible.
What's
this? How is it that you can change your feelings from How is it that you can change your feelings from pleasure to anger overnight about a mere shade tree?
There, we're trying way too hard on
that
that
was a
one.
bit much.
Sorry for the Ivy's infinitely better.
That is the
Yeah.
best one.
Pity for the Gourd's the best. But Pity for the Gourd's like a metal Midwest rock
Yes,
band.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I am starting a band called Pity for the Gourd. That is happening.
Okay, we have a verse and a half.
Thank you all. Yeah, we're almost there. Thank you all so much. Everyone's like F for the Ivy.
That'd be a great T-shirt.
All right,
that'd be a great Midwest emo
Press
band.
F for Ivy. F for the Ivy. All right. Thank you all very much. I'm glad you're enjoying the biblical translation memes, the very relevant jokes on the Wendigoon live
Squid
stream.
for $20 said, Jonah really said, I'll do it for the vine, I swear.
Ban Squid.
Okay. To be angry.
Yeah, just go ahead and dox that guy. All right. Anyway, we're literally at the end of the. We've almost
I
read
know.
the entirety of the book of Jonah. Give me this.
Do
Okay. All right. He said, "Then said the Lord, Thou hast had pity on the gourd, for the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night." God's saying, okay, you are mad about the gourd. You're mad over this plant. You didn't work for it. You didn't labor over it. It literally appeared overnight. You're mad about that. And God finishes the book of Jonah by saying, "And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 600,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle." What God's saying there at the end of it is Jonah, who is so upset over the death of his plant, the ivy, as we established, he's so upset over the plant dying that he's not thinking about the people of Nineveh. And what God does there in the last verse is he's not like, yeah, those wicked, terrible people the way Jonah thinks them. He says they're people who cannot discern their left from their right. They literally don't know any better. They haven't been taught, like you said. Like it seems like they were just like, they needed someone to tell them. They just needed to be taught. And when they were taught, they exceedingly gave into it.
Yeah.
It's not a case of Sodom and Gomorrah where they rejected it. They willingly received it. And because of that, God was willingly just to forgive them. So he forgives them right away, and he tells Jonah, you were mad about the gourd. No one labored over it. It appeared in a day and was gone in a day. But 600,000 people you want me to wipe off the earth because they can't tell their right hand from their left. And it's a point to Jonah to say, it's so easy for you, who knows better, who's been trained in the ways of the Lord, who is a prophet of God, to look at yourself and say, I'm so much better of them, because he's had the privilege of being taught. But what of these people who don't know their right from their left? And in the end, the gourd was an object lesson to point out Jonah's own hypocrisy. And what's important to mention as an underline about, that's where the book of Jonah ends. And when he's mentioned in 2 Kings, he's just mentioned as one of the prophets. This is the only inference we get to his life. And we don't know anything specific about him. However, this account made its way somehow back to the temple and was recorded by the scribes, which means Jonah returned to his homeland, probably to Judah, and had this written down by the priests, and it was recorded. So at some point, Jonah figured it out, right? Because he didn't record it, and the scribe, which again, it's all divine inspiration from God. I believe the truth would have shown through even if Jonah didn't show it. But it seems that Jonah went back and gave them the story in a way to say, yeah, I was wrong. I wanted to die. That's how dramatic I was over the gourd, right? I wanted to die 3 times. He told them I wanted to die at 3 different points in this story. Yeah. But God said these are people who cannot tell their right from their left. And he recognized that. So in the end, after this, the fact that this book exists as it does, we can see that Jonah got the point. But it's a message to us in the modern time that just because we hate someone or someone hates us, it doesn't mean that we're justified in thinking we're better than them. Or it's not justified that God should be as wrathful to him as we would be, because God is a God of mercy. And just as he showed mercy to us, he shows mercy to everyone. We're all God's children, and no one gets favorites. So whenever Jonah was so afraid to go to these wild, ravenous people and tell them about the mercies of God, that he was willing to run away, get swallowed by a well, and still hated doing it, God had everything prepared from the start. And if he would have just done that, think of how Jonah would have been celebrated if he just evangelized the whole city God had ready for him, rather than fighting it before and after the fact. But God's way was prepared regardless, even if Jonah was a very unwilling participant through most of it.
Now, I'm just curious because I have an idea, but I want to hear yours. Of in relation to what you just said about the fact that this was most likely told by Jonah to the scribes, it ends with God's question.
Yeah.
So we are led to believe, based on that context, that it is that question that then changed Jonah's mind.
I would agree. I think.
So what do you think it is about that question specifically that made Jonah realize?
I think what it was is, again, the context I mentioned earlier from the Book of Kings. His people had been at war with the people of Syria, of like Nineveh and all around. Literally, like, they've shed blood over each other time and time again. These were people that he's grown up to hate. I made the joke earlier, like, what about Osama bin Laden? But to him, that was like the equivalent. The people who attack his people, and they hate his God, right? So he goes to them. He's like, these wicked, evil people who want to kill me. And I think he was so blinded by his own rage and his fury towards them that even after he told them the word of God, he's like, these are still my enemy.
It's like if someone told me to go save Ohio.
Yes.
Stop.
They have shed our blood.
I can't
in
continue.
the football stadiums.
Thanks for the stream.
Channel's up for auction now.
Well, it is. I do have a theological point to make. It does show a development also in the way that God feels and treats people outside of the tribes of Israel. There's an evolution here in the way that God is approaching non-believers outside of his own chosen people. It's no longer the way it was in the pre-kingdom period, where it was, and you go there and you kill all of the Canaanites because that land is yours. Now it's even like, these people are your enemies. Go and save them.
Yes.
It shows a pretty distinct change.
It's also the difference, like with the Canaanites and stuff like that, they were constantly at war.
Yeah.
They were constantly trying to kill them. There's arguments that the Canaanites were part Nephilim, whatever that was. This was clearly a group of people who was not to be made peace with.
I just love the way you just that. Yeah, they were part of whatever that was. Anyway.
I'm just used to it at this point. But yeah, with groups like that, there was no interest in them finding God. They were just trying to kill whoever was out there as enemies. But Nineveh was willing. That's what the importance of that last verse is. Because Jonah was so angry, so headlong, that he's like, these are my enemies. Even after I told him, they're still my enemies. They're still enemies of my people. Yep. And God's question there at the end is, they just don't know any better. It's easy for you to say that. It's easy for you, with all your education and your knowledge of God, to look at these people and say, wow, what barbarians. But as God, they just don't know their right from their left. I already prepared their hearts for you and for me whenever I came. That's why everything went so well for you, Jonah. But Jonah, you can't look at these people with hate when all I'm trying to give them is love. And if they're willing to accept that, then they'll accept that. So I think it's just the fact that Jonah was way too narrow-minded to consider what God says at the end. They can't discern between their right and their left. Who are you to say you're better than them?
So it's an object lesson on empathy.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. Yes.
And somebody in the chat did point out. They said I'm gonna probably butcher this pronunciation of the name, but Isai Oviedo said respect for Jonah for not leaving out the bad details, which I think is a good
Correct,
point.
yes, that is a good point.
For all of Jonah's faults throughout the story, he does come back and tell
I
it.
do think, because there are parts mentioned throughout the Bible with the scribes, that it's like divine inspiration was often given for them to tell the story, because God's word was going to be carried out. And it's not like if Jonah messed up here, God's like, oh, well, now I've got to scrap the whole Bible thing. God's word would have been carried out. But there's no mention of that here. There's no mention of Jonah's death. And the way it ends sounds like an account of Jonah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where, even if they didn't write it directly, they would correspond the story. So it does sound to me like this was a testament to Jonah, especially because in 2 Kings, which, if you're reading through, appears earlier, but chronologically comes later. If you're reading, because the way 2 Kings works, it's like, here's all the prophets. It's like a straight description. And then the other books of the Bible give more insight on those prophets. So, like, in 2 Kings, whenever it mentions Jonah, he's there at the temple, so he probably made it back, so it's very likely that he corresponded to the story. So you're right, it was good of him to be like, I messed up. Here's when I lied to God. Here's when I ran from God. I tried to kill myself 3 times. But throughout it all, God was merciful. And he ends on the same question that turned his mind around.
Yes.
Which I think is a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
Really quick, somebody named Michael said he's 30 today and would absolutely love a happy birthday from Mr. Conspiracy himself.
Oh, well, happy 30th birthday, Michael. I'm so honored that you chose to spend it with us. It means the world. Thank you very much, man. Happy birthday. I appreciate
Happy
it.
birthday, Michael.
Happy birthday, man.
All right, I think, well, that does it for Jonah.
Yeah,
That's quite literally the end of the book of Jonah. There's no more I can go into.
Do we want to take questions for a little bit, or?
We'll do that for a little bit. Now, on his channel, what we'll do is, and I imagine we may not be able to do this for much longer.
Yeah.
What we'll normally do is we're like, every super chat will respond to the questions. That is not feasible here because I want to go to bed eventually. So, for a little bit.
We might have to reformat the way we do questions.
Yeah, it's been a little over an hour and a half. For a little bit, we'll take. If anyone has any questions about the story of Jonah or the Bible in general or anything really,
Say half an hour.
We're not going to be like, no, that's not a biblical question. Yeah, like for half an hour. If anyone has any questions about biblical lore, stories, or what have you, we'll do our best to answer them. I am not studying on every story ready to go at all the months, but I'll do my best. So
I have a question.
Yes,
Okay, go for it.
Why
Start
was
us
it
off.
vaguely blasphemous for me to say not a great day to be God on that one? Because
Yeah,
it was mainly facetious.
I know.
but-
We were joking.
We were
Okay,
more
I just-
joking with you.
I wanted
yeah.
to make sure because if it was, I would have been like, oh boy. all right.
No,
No,
you're fine.
Technically, the definition of blasphemy, at least in the Bible, is defaming or demeaning the position of God. So our joke was,
Because I said it's not a great day to be
yeah,
God.
it's like it would always be a great day.
Yeah.
We were joking. We
Got it.
did,
Okay, just
yeah.
making
We
sure.
understood it said in jest.
Yeah.
If you were to say like,
You
I'm
hit 2
trying.
mil.
I don't even know.
If
What?
you would-
You hit 2 mil.
What?
You hit 2 million.
No, I didn't.
Somebody said so.
You can see it right there. 1.9.
I haven't refreshed the stream.
I didn't get 25,000 subscribers. I think they're just saying happy early.
Oh,
too
okay.
early.
All right.
Yeah.
But
Maybe.
you gave me a heart attack. Thank you, though.
So, like, if you were to say God is not great, that would be blasphemous.
Yeah, if you were to be like God
Okay,
is
yeah, you're
not.
right. You're right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
sorry.
As a
Somebody
Christian,
said-
if you were to say God's not great, technically that would be blasphemous.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins
You're
said
not a
it.
blasphemer.
All right. Also, I know we haven't looked at all the super chats because I've been talking and trying to keep everyone on pace. But to everyone who gave a super chat this time, thank you all so much. It means the world to do stuff like this and to have you guys donate and support. It means a ton. I can also say the money from this will be going towards these guys over on their channel, and they don't know that I'm doing this because I'm currently they're currently getting new camera and sound equipment and stuff like that. So this is going to support them. And again, link in the description. Go to the Lore Lodge, subscribe there. We'll be doing this again Tuesday and every month afterwards over on their channel. So
Well, thank you ahead of time.
you're very welcome.
I-
You're very welcome. Kayla Garrett, happy birthday, Michael.
There's
Thank you,
a-
Kayla, who's lying flat in the floor just off screen.
Here's an interesting question from David Bradford for $10, and I'm curious your thoughts on this specifically as someone who teaches the Bible.
Hold on. So who was that? That was Problematic Farmer. That's your all.
That's one of
Yeah,
our
yeah,
Yeah,
mods.
the
Yeah.
mod. She said, Jonah, Nightmare Prophet Blunt Rotation. That's very funny. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay,
I feel like that's
sorry.
what
Somebody did ask the question that I caught in here. I lost it, but they said, "Are there any 20th century versions of the Bible, or has God abandoned us?" We do have 20th century versions. The
That's a little
there's the NKJV, the ASV, and the ESV, which are all 21st century or turn of the 20th century. Sorry, 20th century or turn of the 20th century. And then the I believe the NASB and the 21st century King James also exist. A lot of Christians will default to the King James because it is kind of like the OG English translation. It did have a phenomenal process. Some of the newer versions, like the ASV and the ESV, do take into account more recent discoveries and older and
KJP
older works.
represent.
JP, woo!
Basically, as we found, like for example, some of the Dead Sea Scrolls that we didn't find until the 20th century, those have been taken into account for certain newer translations, like the 21st century King James. So it's just there have been minor additions, but the really interesting thing about this is any changes that are made as we find older and older copies of these texts tend to be extraordinarily minor. Like the message remains the same.
At the end, okay. At the end of the day, God's power to save is greater than any text you can put to it. Christ being salvation is the point of the Bible. That's the main point. Pretty much at all the translations, you're going to get that. That's a priority. I think as a Christian, if you are looking to grow, understand, and better know the Word, I have found in my own study the KJV to be best for that.
Yeah.
For like the wording, the studies, and what have you.
That is my go-to for study.
But you can be saved out of anything. So you can be saved out of a track, out of a sermon, out of a friend, whatever.
In relation to that, somebody asked, his name was David Bradford, he said, not a believer, but dang, this stuff is cool. Why is it that so many Christians are such poor representatives of their proclaimed faith?
Because
Poor education.
Poor education for one, but also despite being Christians, people are still people and are still full of ego, pride, corruption, and other what have you. And a lot of the times, being a follower of Christ doesn't take that away, and some people don't want that taken away. So they will just take those selfish attributes and apply them to their religion because it gives them a sense of superiority. So that's, I mean, frankly, the reason why they're still people. They're still bad. It's not like Christians are going to be a magical airbrush that removes all sin from someone. That's not what the Bible's about. And it also means that there's going to be a lot of people who claim to be Christians who do not act like it or flat out are not. So
Well, I think it's
that's why.
That's such a really interesting point, specifically because, like, when you look at the general culture that we have today, especially like repercussions that people will have socially for certain things that occur, it kind of is a really prime example of the increasing secular nature of at least the West in regard to, it seems like on the whole, whether we're talking about religion or not, people tend to seem to forget that the entire point of understanding religion and Christianity is that we are all sinners.
Correct. Yes.
And that, like, the whole point of the religion and Christ and everything is to be saved. But it's like when people sin, it's like we get raked over the coals. Like, not we, but like there's a lot of raking over the coals, at least socially, especially on social platforms and things. And not a lot of forgiveness in the sense of, like, it's important to recognize the sin and make sure that whoever commits it is repenting and wants to. That's a different story. But it seems like for those who do seem to try and want to move forward from their, transgressions, that it is not. It's the story of Jonah in the sense of there are a lot of Jonahs out there today who see people willingly trying to better themselves, and they say nope.
Yep. That's honestly the perfect way to look at it. They're just being Jonah, right?
Yeah.
They see people who are like not on their level, and they're like, look at that sinner, look at that pathetic. That can never be me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, look at their lust and pride. Don't look at my greed, envy, gluttony. Exactly. They'll look at people and be like, wow, I can't believe I'm so much better than them.
Yeah.
When
I could never do that.
I could never do that. They're literally just being Jonah.
Yep.
It's the same story time again. Which is why I think the story of Jonah is so important and so important to get there, because it's the same thing we see time and time again. People who follow God and think that makes them better than everyone else. But as God said, you had pity on the gourd. Why not pity on the city? Yeah. So. Thank you for the whistle.
Such wisdom.
Did you like that?
Yeah, okay. I did like that.
All right.
That was good. You've always got a few zingers in there that I'm like, damn, that's a good point.
I appreciate that. I will say, I do see right here, Ray, one of my mods, thank you, Ray, said, what a fun discussion. Where can I find more of it? Is there a specific channel? Like a Lore Lodge type of channel, perhaps? Once again, if you all came late, these two are from the Lore Lodge. We do this kind of podcast once a month over on their channel. This Tuesday, we're going to be doing it again on their channel and every month afterwards. So my entire description on this stream is linked to their channel. Click on that link, subscribe to them. They deserve it.
Thank you. I wanted to snag this. Okay. Dulcet Purple Pie asked, anyway, my question, even though not insanely related, is what are your thoughts on animals having souls or going to heaven? Just curious. In my opinion, biblically, there is not a suggestion that animals necessarily have souls or go to heaven, but also it is written that in heaven you'll want for nothing. I would like to believe that that means that I could be reunited with my animals, should I want to.
It's one of those. When we get into heaven and
Yeah.
hell and all that stuff, I'm just like,
There's so there is so
Yeah.
little biblical writing about the specifics of heaven and hell.
yeah.
That it's hard to really know. It seems as though there's definitely no mention of animals having souls.
Right.
Is there a mention of animals not having
There's mention
souls?
of animals. There's not a mention of them not having souls. There's not a mention. There is a mention of animals being in heaven.
Okay.
But what does that mean? It's
Yeah,
Which animals?
I personally would like to believe that,
Yeah,
if I get up there and God says, what would you like, and I can say my dog, I'd like to believe that.
it's one of those things
Yeah.
that I'm like, it is. Heaven is literally beyond my comprehension.
Yeah.
Incomprehensible. Thank you, God. Someone said, "I've never been to church. How do I sign up?" If it's any church worth their salt, you can walk in and be greeted friendly.
Yeah.
And if you're not a good church.
That's a good litmus test for whether you want to go to
Did
that
I
church.
feel welcome? No, not a good church.
I would recommend, if you're iffy about churches, instead of going directly to a church service, one thing that you can always do is reach out to your local church and ask to meet with the pastor, the reverend, the minister, the priest, any of those things. Almost every case, they will say, sure, let's grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, something like that, and I'll sit down and we can talk about what our sect believes in.
That's just what they became
Yeah.
a priest or pastor
Exactly,
for.
that is their job. There's a pastor who comes and sits at a local Steel City, a local coffee shop by us, and just they sit there with their computer, and while they're working, they have a sign that says, "I'm a pastor. Please interrupt me."
That's
So
lovely.
yeah, when we had some questions about demonology and more organized versions of Christianity, I reached out to a local Orthodox priest, and he came on the show.
Yeah.
And sat there and talked with us for an hour and a half. He was a super kind guy. I still text him when I have questions. I don't always agree with his takes, but at the same time, it's
Always good to get another
Yeah.
source.
and it's we're different denominations, and I know we're definitely of different levels of belief. Like the thing about Christianity is there's always a discussion to be had.
Oh, yeah.
The goal is
But
always
that's the fun part.
Yeah, the goal is to find salvation. It's not to, tell people that they can't possibly find it because of some stupid reason.
No, just going right back to Jonah again.
Someone asked a question I know you love to answer. You've got it pulled up. Yeah,
That was that one.
Yeah, the Christianity and Islam worshiping the same God, Abrahamic faith.
A Catholic friend of mine subscribes to that belief, but I tend not to. So this is going to be controversial, to be honest. Islam has the Quran has a few passages that very, very, very explicitly contradict the Old Testament and the New Testament.
I think,
For example, Christ, the account of Christ's birth.
Well, yeah. But I think what the question is, because I mean, I'm a Christian who follows the Bible. I don't subscribe to the Quran. I think the question is the God not like is like the Allah mentioned in the
Yeah.
Quran, the God? And,
I'll answer it this way.
Yes.
Muslims definitely believe that they worship the same God as Christians.
Right.
I do not agree with that.
Right.
Personally, I would not say that.
I
would say that the
think-
God of the Quran and the God
Sure.
of
Well,
the Bible
hold on. They're
are
not
simply
talk-
two different.
They're
yeah.
still not talking about worship. I don't think. I think the question is, does it all root back to the same? Which it does. It roots back to Abraham.
It roots back to Abraham.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the God of Abraham is the God of. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so-
think that's what the question.
Yeah, so in that sense, yes.
Clearly, if we're Christians with the Holy
Yeah.
Bible, we're not like, oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
I also worship the Quran. So like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's different beliefs. But
Yeah, they're
lining
both
up
the God of
through the
Abraham.
route of Abraham, it's both through the God of Abraham, which
Yeah.
is Yahweh, Jehovah, what have you. Yeah.
Somebody did point out that you're drinking Dr. Enough.
Thank you. Someone recognized it. Yeah. Woo.
Also, one thing I do enjoy about this program that we do is that it's not just for Christians. It's not just
Yeah.
for.
Oh, the most I've seen in here is I'm not a believer, but this is really cool,
Yeah,
and I
like-
really like this.
I really like people saying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We're not doing this to necessarily reinforce the beliefs of Christians or convert you. The reason we do this is because we find it interesting,
Yeah.
and we think that sharing that interest might be something that interests you.
Well, I think even from a non-believer perspective, those, especially those who did not grow up in the faith,
Yeah.
and are just being exposed to this, like even if you look at the Bible from a purely secular standpoint, the wisdom within it and the oral history that is now written, obviously, has so much knowledge and power in terms of helping you understand not just the world in a historical context, but the world from a personality and psychological context of understanding people, of understanding the way we operate, the way things work, why you should have empathy for people. I mean, that's what tonight's section was about in relation to Jonah.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of all of the different elements within the Bible. It's just really good teaching in relation to how you should interact with people and why.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and what's beautiful about the Bible is there's a lot of stories, even ones a lot of people know, stuff like David and Goliath, Jonah, Daniel, what have you. These stories that are looked at as like, wow, what a tale of this thing God did one time.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you like dissect, and that's one of the reasons I like doing it here, the overall messages are much greater than that. They're messages of fear, pride, as we looked at today, stories of envy, wrath, all kinds of stuff
It's the human story.
that are applicable as a person,
Yeah.
just in the modern age. Like I believe it, to be the true holy word of God. But I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with the idea of it is wrong to look at yourself as being better for what you know versus what others have not been taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lesson that anyone can take away from. Which is why I like talking about a lot of them to everyone. And also because I think, Jesus Christ is pretty cool and good to get out there.
There was a question here where somebody said, "Is Gog and Magog Russia?" It's difficult to.
Oh, are you getting into Revelation prophecy now?
Well, yeah, this is Ezekiel over
no.
here.
Oh, no.
But to
Here
answer
you
the
go.
question, I don't know. The Revelation is one of the. Let me put it this way. I took a semester-long course in college at the 400 level on the Book of Revelation. It was taught by someone who was an Orthodox Christian. The entire class was various Christians and a couple of Jews. And one thing that we all came to the conclusion of by the end was Revelation is something to be accepted and not necessarily understood.
It is definitively a part of the Bible.
Yeah.
I believe the themes in it are more important than the literal translation of it. And I think that's for a reason, because if a lot of people are like, okay, why did God do that? Why was it like, prophecy and all that? If God had told us the exact moment the world would end,
Probably wouldn't be great.
that would be horrible.
Well,
it
because
would just be like, we can do whatever we want. The world's not going in for another. Yeah. So
There's-
the fact that it's vague is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's more so the themes and ideas that we have as Christians until that point
Yeah.
that is important.
There's a really interesting question here that I'm curious about from both of you. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but I do not know this from your perspective whatsoever. Have y'all had an experience that has proven his existence in your own life? And if not, do you have any stories from other people?
I wouldn't say proven, but I've definitely had things that were, I was like, yeah, that's God. Like,
Well, yeah, I've had.
I know I've got one
Yeah.
that's...
I've had like the most I could say proven to me as a believer has been times in my life that I've suffered through great grief, turmoil, things like that, and it is an overwhelming peace I can't explain that comes with prayer, that comes with giving it to God, essentially, in ways I can't describe, in ways that are impossible to manifest otherwise. And believe me, I've tried. He's the great comforter above all else to us Christians, right? And as far as proof goes, I believe there's no greater proof for creation, existence, consciousness, all that than that of divine creation. So I've it's as Paul said, the world itself showeth evidence. So I believe the world itself to be proof, so to speak. But in my own life, I can tell you that I'm assured that He's real through the experiences I've had. And there's been moments, I guess you could say, supernatural-esque, but it's just been like dreams I've had of lost family members that have comforted me and stuff like that. That I know wouldn't necessarily prove it to anyone else, but I have. Why did you beat that bug?
it's a stink bug too.
Stink bug.
Well, he was trying to get it off his hat.
Yeah, I got it off that.
Nuts over there.
I was having a moment. I'm kidding. but yeah, he's proven his existence to me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be a straight callback to like a specific moment, but I just know there have been times in my life where, something should definitely have gone wrong, and I somehow was not affected by it, or where something. I mean, I think one of the ones that really sticks out to me is the fact that we're here right now. Like, if I look back to where I was January of 2021, and all of the things that had, I guess going to June 2021 when we started the channel, this was not the trajectory my life was on, and I, in that period, in that 6 months, been through just, hit after hit. Like, I was on my knees at that point, and here we are. Like, and I can look back now and see that every single bad thing that had happened to me over that time period, it was all serving a purpose that I was not yet prepared to see.
Right.
But looking back now, I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a pretty blatant story that I'm curious about your opinion on, considering it's rather unconventional, at least as far as I'm aware. But when I was about 5, my mom had gotten up earlier in the morning, and there was a part of our house that was kind of separate from the rest of the house, and she was on the phone with her mother, and her mom had informed her earlier in the morning that her grandfather, so her mother's dad, had passed that night, and they were just kind of recounting that and thinking about that, and the conversation had moved on. He was old, he lived a good life, but obviously he'd passed. She was very sad about it. But so a couple hours later, I woke up, and I lived in I slept in a completely separate part of the house, or whatnot. And my mom, she was like on the speakerphone with her mother or whatever, and I walked into the room, and she says, "Good morning, sweetie. How are you?" And the first thing I said was, "Pop Jim died last night, didn't he?" And my mom just kind of didn't really know. She was like, "What? What do you mean?" And she was, because the first thing she said was to her mother was like, "Did you hear that?" And she was like, "Why did you say that?" And my response was, according to my mother and my grandmother, God told me in my sleep last night. He wanted me to know that he's in heaven now and he's happy and he's okay. And I just pondered off, and they just kind of sat in awe and confusion, and they were like, "What just happened?" Obviously, that is secondhand. I don't have definitive proof of that, but I just know that was a story that was told to me, and when it was told to me, it seemed like it was like they were not being like they were not. They were telling the truth. It seemed like they were telling me the truth. And my question to you is like, thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I've had experiences similar to that, I would say. I had a dream that my my neighbor would pass away. I had a dream that he was in heaven with my grandfather, and then the next day he died. I did not know the guy was sick or even near the point of dying.
Yeah.
I've had weird moments like that, my end interpretation of it is, why not? After Christ died, so this is probably the best example, I would say, physically, of like the modern age of faith. So before Christ, the way that it worked is you had to tell a priest of your sins, you had to perform the sacrifice. The priest would physically walk through the veil of the temple and then speak to God directly at the mercy seat for your sins, right? It was a physical interaction. Whenever Christ died on the cross, an angel came down from heaven and ripped the veil in half in the temple, signifying that you no longer need a mediator. We can all talk to God directly. And after Christ, the Holy Spirit, the big deal of salvation is that the Holy Spirit dwells within us. It's part of us. And God said that he will no longer interfere or directly interact with man, or at least not in the same level he used to, as to steer humanity towards the eventual return of Christ. Instead, humanity will have their free will and their decision to return to companionship with him. When you have people ask, what's the point of living? In my belief, it's to return to the companionship of Christ. So, instead of directly interacting us, or God coming down and showing his power to us physically, Like, why doesn't God make himself known? Because that's not that's fear, that's capitulation. If a giant man from the sky were to appear and change the winds.
This ties in a lot to the conversation you and I had on drive down here.
Yeah,
about
sure.
free
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, so the most important part of that is free will. So he will allow us to be our own devices. We have the freedom to do whatever we want on earth, either if it's towards him or away from him. But to his followers and to believers, and especially to children, I believe, he's still the comforter. He still provides the comfort. It's not a physical way. It's not in appearing before you and saying, feel better, right?
Yeah.
But it's through the peace, through the solutions that you feel. I can say that praying about peace in my life has done marvelous works, and I can say in situations like that, the idea of giving a child peace about it is definitely something God would do, in my opinion. So, like I said, why not? So, that's my belief. My girlfriend's in the chat spamming kiss.
Sorry, what?
I just see Kayla going down. They're going to kiss. Thank you.
I don't see that.
I see this one guy.
As a kid, I thought Jesus was Mexican.
Well, he's not white, so close enough.
Yeah. He's close
Yes,
to being
Mexicans,
Mexican than
Jews,
white.
same thing. right?
Mexican, Jewish, whatever. Yeah. Someone's not your average taco set, which is a great name. Hi, Wendigoon. I'm a big fan. You inspired me to start my own YouTube channel. I even bought the YouTube. So that means the world. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're starting your YouTube channel. Good luck.
Yeah,
He
good luck
says,
with that.
I was one.
Keep at it. No, that was a genuine good luck. Yeah, no.
You said that with sarcasm.
I didn't mean for it to sound
Yeah.
sarcastic.
Yeah,
Like, no,
genuinely good luck.
Keep up with it. Good luck with it. Like, you
Remain
know, it's
consistent.
It is entirely about perseverance.
He said, I was wondering if you do merch. Eventually. I have like PTSD from merchandise when I was managing it all myself and my girlfriend. Eventually, I'll probably do like a limited merch run or something like that. Currently, I'm just shilling movie projects and stuff like that. That's my merch. I saw a question in here. I think I lost it with my girlfriend telling us to kiss. Thanks, sweetie.
They want Gord merch. I did make the Gord shirt.
Yeah, that
If
that
you-
wasn't a joke. It actually now exists.
if you go to the lorelodge.shop and search Jonah and the Gord, you will see a hoodie that says what was the exact wording? The dust thou.
Hang on.
Dost
Thou well to be angry for the gourd?
Yeah, you will find that.
Anyway,
I only have the hoodie up right now, but I will add t-shirts and tanks.
Someone said, "What's your take on the unforgivable sin?"
It depends on what you mean by the unforgivable sin, because the Catholics are like, there are several of them, and the only one I believe is unforgivable is the one at the end of Revelation.
It's a stink bug.
Yeah,
Grow
I know.
up.
I don't like bugs.
I'd
Anyway,
rather not land on my face.
So my take on unforgivable sin is that there's exactly one, and it is altering the prophecy in the book of Revelation and presenting a false prophecy. In my opinion, that is the only unforgivable sin. It is the only one in the Bible that says that your name will be struck from the book of life, and it's basically because you're misleading people about the end of times and what is necessary for salvation. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I'm a little less sure about that, because there's also points in the Bible where it's like, no man shall blot thy name out. No action can blot thee out. But I also understand if it were to be one, it would be false teachers who lead people astray willingly about it. And I get that, but at the same time, I think, and what maybe they're referring to is whenever Christ said the only sin is the sin of non-belief. So essentially, the only thing that cannot be forgiven is to never trust in God, to never follow Him, which, that stacks with it. But it just depends on which part you're referring to, basically. Can you...
These guys wouldn't stand a chance against a cockroach. You're damn right.
Grow up. Can you explain the difference between Orthodox, Catholicism, and Protestantism? Shortly. Briefly.
All right, so we're going to have to start with Catholic and Orthodox. Originally, in the very, very early church, there was something called the Pentarchy. And that Pentarchy means the rule of five in Greek. And what you had was the cities of Rome, Constantinople, I want to say Damascus, Jerusalem, and Alexandria. Somebody might want to fact check me on that, but I'm 90% sure those are the five. And each of those was essentially an archbishopric like Rome. From about the 700s on, you start to see, actually it begins in the late 5th century, but it starts to really take shape in like the 600s, 700s. The late 5th century, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, there's a change. Because the Catholic Church, the Roman Church, goes from being the religious arm to the only consistent centralized power in Western Europe. As a result, they start to add in doctrine that is not scriptural, but they claim is traditional. And they start to claim that they have supremacy over secular kings. The Eastern Orthodox Church does not agree with this, because they're still within the Roman Empire. They don't need to be kings. They are the religious arm, and the empire is the government arm. The Catholics had to take on a dual role. So, for better or for worse, the Catholic faith started to implement some things that were not biblical and that the Eastern Church really didn't like. And then you start to get to things like the iconoclast controversy, the filioque, which is that basically there's the argument that, I'm trying to remember how this goes exactly, but that the Holy Spirit and Christ both proceed from the Father. And then there's one that suggests that the Holy Spirit proceeds from Christ and Christ proceeds from the Father. What?
Just watching Caleb yell at people.
So that's kind of how that goes. That's a big one. The iconoclast controversy is a big one. And then in 1054, the two churches split because they can't reconcile their differences. The Orthodox Church continues on in much the same fashion. It is still today very similar to the way it was originally. In the West, the Catholic Church after 1054, now that it didn't have to worry about the Orthodox, just kind of accelerated on this. Around 1075, you get the investiture controversy. 1071 to 1075, I think, is the period during which it really is argued. It goes on a little bit longer than that, though, for another couple decades before it's eventually sorted out. But the argument is over who has the right to invest bishops. Now, bishops in the Middle Ages were different than bishops today. In the Middle Ages, they were also military commanders and governors. So a secular king had a stake in assigning a bishop because that was land within his kingdom, and he wanted to make sure that whoever it was going to work for the good of the kingdom. Whereas the Pope had a stake because this was going to be his representative in that territory. Gregory VII and Henry the Fourth, I want to say, of the Holy, it was either 4th or 5th of the Holy Roman Empire, argued over this and actually very nearly turned into open war between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire.
Really?
Yeah. It was eventually sorted out by King Henry II of England and Thomas of Becket, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury. And eventually they sorted it out that I think it was one got to appoint, the other got to veto. So basically nominate and accept, and that way they had to work together on it. And this, in turn, led to a number of other problems. And then you get to the 1300s, and people start translating the Bible on their own and studying the Bible on their own, and coming to the conclusion that, you know what, the Catholics have changed some things, and they're not sure they love that. And so you get to a point where now you have secular kings who don't love the way that the Catholic Church is doing things, and the Catholic Church is essentially trying to flex its power even more, which leads to the conciliary period, which is a time period where the Catholic Church is trying to bring in outside people to say, all right, here are our grievances, will you address them? Now, the problem is that the Catholic Church's way of addressing them is to invite Jan Hus, a Bohemian rebel and Protestant, early Protestant, pre-Reformation, to come and speak to them in Venice. This guy was a reformer. He also invented mobile artillery. He was the first to put cannons on wagons and drag them around. What they would do is they would fire the cannons, and then the enemy army would go to where the cannons were, which meant that they knew exactly where to set up the cannons the next time. And they would just fire where the cannons just were. It was devastating because this was brand new. So they invite Jan Hus down to express his grievances, and instead of listening to him, they kill him, which pisses off a lot of people. And then 100 years later, Martin Luther gets sick of a whole bunch of things, 95 to be exact, nails them to a door, and accidentally starts the Protestant Reformation. He didn't actually want to split the church. He wanted the Catholic Church to get its shit together. They didn't. And so the core differences between the Orthodox and Catholic Church are very different from the core differences between the Protestant and the Catholic Church, but they do all kind of center around this idea of the primacy of the Pope. Now, the Pope in Rome does have primacy afforded to him by Christ in a sense that Peter was made first among the apostles, but Peter was first among equals. The Pope started to kind of make himself the head honcho. He was supposed to be the tie-breaking vote. He was supposed to be the first among equals, the leader. Instead, he ended up becoming, like, I'm the most important, which was not the way this was supposed to go.
Yeah.
Catholics view the story a little bit differently. Orthodox view the story a little bit differently, and Protestants view the story a little bit differently. Obviously, all favorable towards their own side.
That makes sense. Thoughts?
Thank you.
I mean, it's medieval history. It's like that.
It's his whole thing.
I went. My degree is in medieval studies, so this is like
fair enough.
this is my thing.
The short version is people took God, realized they could use it for power, did a lot of wacky stuff with it. God and Christianity still exist regardless.
Yeah.
Catholics.
I'm not saying that out loud.
I can because I was raised Catholic.
Okay, all right. I'm not saying it out loud. I think that's about all the questions I've seen in there.
I think that's about all our brains can handle for one.
Yeah,
segment.
we've gone a pretty good while. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Kayla, you want to come in for the ending? What? Oh, okay. Do you want to wear my jacket or something?
Oh, you have the hat.
Yeah, they'll never know that. Someone said put the bug on the mic.
Yeah.
People keep asking, did Paul cuss when he said rubbish? I mean, maybe some. The word piss is in the Bible. If that makes anyone happy.
In relation to, like, is it referring to?
It's referring to it, yeah, like actual excrement.
Okay.
Yeah, David's talking about the foolish men who they stood guard for, and they now neglected him. Who David tried to kill, wanted to kill him, and then his wife made an atonement, like, please don't kill my husband, and then she married David. But whenever David was described them, they're like him and his sons, they who pisseth against the wall. Talking about they don't care for, like, the protection we've given.
So they were rocking a
essentially.
piss against the wall. Wow.
They were ready to do it. Let's stop that, you northerner. Thanks when you're doing Lord Lodge Friends Chat. I don't know much about the Bible, but the more I learn, the more I'm amazed by it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. $50 donation from Christopher Merriweather. Thank you very much, Christopher. A few years ago, I had a dream. From his perspective, I was pursuing God during this time, and I don't know how to feel about it. Have I really understood this? How should I view this? God had me do His works from His perspective. If from the dream you got the idea that God does a lot and it's overwhelming for us to try to be God, I think that's a good message to take from it, so to speak. Was that legitimately directly from God? I mean, that's for you to decide, but I think there's a good moral to pull out of that. So
There have been several questions.
I feel like I should find the stink bug. Someone just said stink bug 316. We should ask the stink bug.
Somebody did. There have been several questions about the terminology "synagogue of Satan," and those who say they are Jews but are not.
Oh, there he is.
I will point out that there is, in fact, a very obvious modern-day group who do exactly that.
Who claims they are the synagogues of Satan? Yeah.
Well, no, the Black Hebrew Israelites.
Oh, yeah, the whole,
Yeah, there's, that could mean a number of things. It's, again, with Revelation, it's really hard to interpret because this is not meant to be a prophecy that is understood.
Because if it was understood, that would be not good.
Yeah, if it was understood, we know when the end times are going to be, and it's even written that nobody knows the end times but God.
Kayla, do you want to come on for the ending?
I have pajamas.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm also in my pajamas. I just can't tell.
The single lady said they wanted Kayla here because she's their icon. So here's the Kayla.
I'm trying not to dox
The
myself.
I think you're probably
What?
Do you want to pull up a chair because I
Oh, I'm
think
not
you're-
even in the.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're in.
You're in.
You're like half in.
Your nose is.
Vaguely.
All right. Any final questions in the last couple minutes of the chat?
Here I come, as loud as I can.
Everyone is very excited. I hope you know.
Great.
I was like, woo!
They're asking questions about Kyrie
Something
Irving.
like,
That's kind of what we just mentioned with the whole Black Hebrew Israelites thing. There's a now fairly long running belief among certain groups that the current group of people we know as the Jews are not actually descended from Abraham, and in reality, the lost tribes of Israel went into Africa and became black people. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay. So like you better put context on that. That's crazy. I'm like, we're on my channel. Watch your mouth.
No, I was. Did I say something
No,
wrong?
no, you're fine. You ended it with, which is completely crazy. I thought you were about to just say that and be like, all right, next question.
No, there's like on a simple timeline, it doesn't make sense. Like,
right.
I mean, it's only even if we want to talk about like the lost tribes thing, like that's only 1200 BC. Like we're not.
Yeah.
It was. There's not enough time for people's skin tone to change that
Right,
significantly.
right.
For those asking, the stink bug is on the light.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, it is. It's on.
Somebody said earlier
Yo.
Tennessee State bird.
The stink bug? Oh, that's mean.
Oh,
You got
It said lamp.
lamp.
Yeah. Somebody did ask what kind of Protestants are you guys? I am a Methodist.
Baptist. That's where I teach. Yeah.
Aiden's figuring it
Just
out.
technically Catholic, but
He was raised Catholic. That seems to be the
guys-
answer of anybody raised Catholic is, I guess I'm Catholic.
unless you live in Boston, there's not a whole lot of proud Catholics in this country.
Thank you very much for the donation, Raymond Reviews. Do you know who Gideon is?
No.
Gideon?
Gideon.
Gideon. That's what it
Someone
said.
they
Yeah.
mentioned. I don't know who that is. I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I'm sorry. Or
Um,
streamers, perhaps. I apologize. You're so cute. Hello. Say hi to the world. The whole world out there.
What does the Bible say about homosexuality? It says it's not your job to judge other people.
You're leaving it at that.
Yep.
Joe Jan, $20. Thank you very much for the 100 emojis. I appreciate it. Watch The Chosen, and I'll match all my donations for the Tuesday stream. What's The Chosen? What's
I
The Chosen?
didn't see the what.
I think it's a
Who's the
show.
donation?
I think
Oh, it's a show.
Yeah.
Probably a show.
Okay. All right.
How do you think about the Lucifer Netflix series? I've watched it and it's cringe. Not from a theological standpoint. The writing and acting are cringe.
Wait, do you mean the Lucifer's in? Well, I guess it is technically now Netflix.
Yeah.
The DC show? That's in the DC canon.
Is it actually?
Uh-huh.
Lucifer is a DC show?
Uh-huh.
That bothers me. Anyway, yeah, I saw it. One of my roommates in college watched like a couple seasons of it, and I was just like, this is just an objectively horrible TV show.
All right. So I think we could do this all night.
Yeah, we easily
So I'm going to end it with these two. Wendigoon, you need to make merch out of the stink bug. Thank you. I'll take it into account. And the final question, if God's real, how does one prove it? I would say that the best, again, as I mentioned earlier, the entire thing about like religion and God and what have you is the idea that in the modern age we are supposed to be, it's free will is our primary point. So the entire thing is God does not interact with us. We can choose to follow him and not follow him. But as it says, creation itself beareth witness. And men will continue to try to make explanations and reasons for how the world's come to exist. But that creation exists regardless of man's explanations. And I believe that the fact that we're here in consciousness and all this other unexplainable things is the biggest proof of that we could ever get to. So that being said, I would say that the world and us being here is proof of God's existence and his divine power. And I believe that the greatest proof he has is to you, the individual, because again, the point's free will, and whatever your experience with God is the most powerful experience there is to be. So I would say that. And yeah, would you have anything to add on to that?
No?
I think it's a good enough to end up. Do you have anything you want to say?
No.
Say something to the people at home.
Hello.
Hello. Do you have any Bible questions? You can do the final question.
No, I don't have any.
Do you have anything to mention?
No.
All right.
I'm good.
So ask an arbitrary one. Ask an easy one.
I don't like being put on the spot like that.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I didn't put you on the spot. All right, I say that's about it. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here, of course. And
Well,
Caleb,
thank you for letting us be on your channel.
Yeah.
for
Absolutely,
This is
yeah.
fun.
So again, as I said, these guys of the Lore Lodge, we do this on their channel once a month. There's the Stink Bug for the final appearance. We do this on their channel once a month, and we'll be doing it again in 2 days. So Tuesday evening, probably the same time, right?
Yeah.
Probably
7 PM, yeah.
7-ish. Tuesday at 7, we will be doing the exact same thing over on their channel. Again, we do this every month, so subscribe to their channel anyway. But if you want to see us again in 2 days, check us out over there. So it will be a link in the description. It's also the pinned comment by Kayla Garrett. Thank you, Kayla Garrett. In the chat, in the live chat right now, to go over to the Lore Lodge. Head over there, subscribe to them. We both really appreciate it. And again, thank you all so much for being a part of this stream.
Thank
Thanks
you.
the world. So with that, everyone's saying stink bug, and of course,
Stink bug.
pity the gourd.
Pity the gourd.
Pity the
yeah.
gourd.
They were calling you
Always
Wendigord
been
earlier.
Lord.
That's horrible. We have to kill the chat right now.
All right, guys.
Thank you all so much. Bye.